Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jennifer Londono. Jennifer Londono, a 31-year-old engaged and responsible individual, failed to arrive at her job in Englewood, New Jersey, prompting concerns from her family and friends. As the manager of the newly opened Luna Lounge on Armory Street, Jennifer was a diligent worker with a spotless attendance record. However, on June 25, 2017, she vanished without a trace after closing the bar in the early morning hours. When she didn't show up for her shift that evening, her coworkers grew worried and attempted to contact her. But her phone was switched off, which was unusual because she always maintained regular communication with them. This lack of response heightening their anxiety, her loved ones decided to file a missing person report with the police, highlighting that she always checked in with them before going anywhere. As the investigation began, police visited Jennifer's apartment, where she lived alone. The officers found the front door locked with no signs of forced entry or damage. Upon entering the apartment, they initially noticed nothing out of the ordinary. The space was clean and well-maintained, with no signs of disarray or theft. At first glance, nothing suggested that the apartment was a crime scene. After investigating Jennifer's apartment and finding no leads, the police visited the bar where she worked as a manager to gather more information. They spoke with the staff at the establishment and discovered that Jennifer was well-liked by everyone, with no reported conflicts with patrons or employees. Her co-workers described her as kind, helpful, and highly respected. Jennifer was a driven and ambitious person who had a strong work ethic. In 2016, she partnered with 40-year-old Rafael Lolos to open the Luna Lounge in Englewood, New Jersey. The bar was successful, thanks in part to Jennifer's exceptional people skills and management abilities. Lolos provided the financial backing, while Jennifer was the face of the business, charming customers with her warm personality. What the police discovered during their conversation with the bar staff was that Jennifer and Rafael's relationship went beyond business. They were romantically involved, and their relationship was public knowledge. Despite their close relationship, they had not yet taken the step of living together. The investigation revealed that on the morning Jennifer was last seen, she had closed the bar and gotten into Rafael's car, which was waiting for her after work. As the last person to see her, Rafael became a key person of interest, and the detectives decided to bring him in for questioning. Rafael claimed that he drove Jennifer home from work after she closed the bar, and they spent some time together at her apartment before he left to let her rest for her shift that evening. Following her disappearance, Rafael maintained contact with Jennifer's family and collaborated with them to try to determine her whereabouts. Since there was no apparent connection between Rafael and Jennifer's disappearance, the police concentrated on investigating other leads. However, they faced challenges due to Jennifer's phone being turned off on the day she disappeared, with the last signal coming from a cell tower near her home. Neighborhood interviews yielded no suspicious information. As part of the investigation, the police requested banking records, as they often provide crucial clues in such cases. When the bank shared the data, it revealed an unexpected development: Jennifer's bank card had been used even after she went missing. The investigation led detectives to suspect that Jennifer was intentionally hiding, but her family strongly disagreed, convinced that she would never willingly cause them distress. To gather more information, the police began to investigate the activity on her card, seeking to determine when, where, and how it was used. 2 days after Jennifer's disappearance, on June 27th, a pedestrian walking along Pier 44 in Brooklyn noticed something unusual in the water. The person stared at the object for a while, unable to identify it, before realizing with shock that it was a human body, or at least part of one. The police were summoned to the scene, and the pier was sealed off. A thorough search by divers yielded no additional body parts or evidence. The police faced a daunting challenge in identifying the victim, but a potential lead emerged. A tattoo was discovered on the victim's right thigh during a forensic examination. The tattoo, which may have belonged to the victim, was partially translated from Sanskrit, an ancient Indian language with complex grammar. The police released an image of the tattoo, hoping someone would recognize it and provide information. Investigations revealed that the tattoo's inscription was Sanskrit, but incorrectly written. The tattoo artist and the victim seemed to intend to write Liliana, but did so with grammatical errors, suggesting neither of them was familiar with the language. For days after the initial gruesome discovery, police received another disturbing call from a passerby who spotted a leg on the riverbank near 79th Street. Police immediately cordoned off the area and pulled the leg out of the water. The leg, which was intact from the knee down, seemed to match the remains found earlier, leading investigators to believe they belonged to the same person. A notable detail was the pink-painted fingernails on the leg. Despite an extensive search by divers in the area, no other remains or evidence were found. However, forensic analysis soon confirmed that the fragments found were indeed from the same body. Around this time, the police had already identified the victim. A few days after releasing an image of the distinctive tattoo, a woman contacted the police station and revealed that she knew the tattoo's owner. It was Jennifer's mother, Gladys Quintero, who recognized the tattoo on the news and recognized it as belonging to her daughter. The tattoo, it turned out, was a tribute to Jennifer's late aunt and symbolized the name Lily or Liliana. Jennifer's mother to New York to identify human remains. When it was confirmed that the remains were Jennifer's, the family was left shattered. The discovery marked a significant turn in the case, transforming a missing person investigation into a homicide probe. The family was not only grief-stricken by Jennifer's death, but also horrified by the brutal circumstances surrounding it. Unfortunately, due to the state of the remains, it was impossible to determine the exact cause of death. Despite an extensive search, the police were unable to recover additional body parts. As family and friends paid their respects to Jennifer at her workplace, the bar, detectives were making progress in their investigation. They tracked down leads on Jennifer's credit card usage. Through a thorough review of security footage and store visits, detectives identified the person who had used Jennifer's credit card, Raphael, Jennifer's boyfriend. They discovered that Raphael had left Jennifer's apartment on the day she disappeared to go shopping. His purchases, made with Jennifer's credit card, included a box of garbage bags and 2 meat cleavers from different stores. Later that evening, he crossed the George Washington Bridge into Manhattan, and his cell phone records placed him near the Hudson River. Raphael went home after leaving Jennifer's apartment and never returned. 2 days later, Jennifer's torso was discovered. The police suspected that Raphael might have killed her and dismembered her body using meat cleavers, a disturbing thought considering their romantic relationship. However, the evidence pointing to Raphael's guilt was mounting. As a result, the police obtained an arrest warrant and a search warrant for his home, anticipating that they would soon apprehend him. Raphael attempted to evade capture by renting a hotel room and paying in cash, but he was quickly tracked down and arrested. He did not resist arrest and denied any involvement in Jennifer's death, claiming that Jennifer had given him her credit card. Raphael continued to insist that Jennifer was fine when he left her, but detectives uncovered more evidence that contradicted his testimony. A search of his home revealed dark red stains in the bathroom, which were later confirmed by a lab test to be Jennifer's dried blood. Detectives investigating Jennifer's disappearance analyzed her communications with Raphael and found a pattern of frequent arguments, typically sparked by jealousy. A search of Raphael's home uncovered a box sent via post office and a bag that had previously contained a GPS tracking device. It became clear that Raphael had secretly installed the device on Jennifer's car, allowing him to monitor her movements. Cell phone data revealed that Raphael had picked Jennifer up from work and taken her to her apartment. Although Jennifer's phone was soon turned off, Raphael's phone remained active. Between 9 p.m. and midnight on the day of her disappearance, his phone sent a signal to a cell tower near the Hudson River. This suggests that Jennifer may have already been dead by then, and Raphael may have driven to the river to dispose of her body. Raphael and Jennifer's relationship was complex and tumultuous, with conflicts often centered on financial issues. Despite their efforts to establish a business together, opening a bar less than a year before her disappearance, their relationship was marked by animosity and blurred boundaries. Raphael's messages to Jennifer were volatile, veering between insults, threats, apologies, and declarations of love, with one notable instance where he referred to her as a gold digger. Jennifer's family was shocked and disbelieving when the man who had claimed to love her and helped search for her became the prime suspect in her murder. Raphael refused to explain himself, denied any wrongdoing, and hired a lawyer. Although police couldn't find the exact knives they knew Raphael had bought, they were able to purchase identical ones from the same store. Forensic analysis later confirmed that these knives were used to harm Jennifer's body. Raphael was subsequently charged with several crimes, including murder, desecration of remains, stalking, hindering apprehension, and credit card fraud. The trial, which began in November 2019, lasted for 2 months. Prosecutors claimed that Jennifer was killed by Raphael in her apartment during a jealous argument. Raphael's lawyers argued that the state had no concrete evidence to prove their claim, pointing out that there were no signs of a struggle in the apartment and no marks in the bathtub where Jennifer was allegedly dismembered. The prosecution countered that the lack of evidence was, in itself, evidence of a cover-up. The absence of any signs of a crime suggested that Raphael had made a deliberate effort to conceal his tracks. The bathtub, in particular, was found to be remarkably clean, with no DNA or physical evidence linking Jennifer to the scene. The prosecutor pointed out that an ordinary person's bathtub would not be as clean as the one in question. During the trial, Jennifer's mother emotionally addressed the judge, stating that the defendant had destroyed her life and her family. She emphasized that Jennifer was her beloved daughter, and the defendant's actions had left her devastated. After reviewing the case, the judge determined that Raphael was consumed by an obsession with Jennifer. When given the opportunity to speak, Raphael refused, only communicating with his lawyer. In December 2019, the jury deliberated for 3 days before finding Raphael guilty on all charges. The verdict was officially announced in February 2020. As a result, 43-year-old Raphael received the maximum sentence, life in prison with the possibility of parole after 63 years. This means he will be 106 years old before he can be considered for parole. Unfortunately, the remainder of Jennifer's body was never found. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Petit family. The Petit family was revered as a model family, exceeding expectations with their stable economic background and exemplary children. They effortlessly commanded admiration from those around them. William Petit, the patriarch, was a Connecticut native and a standout athlete in high school, particularly in basketball, where he naturally assumed a leadership role. In addition to his athletic prowess, he was also the valedictorian of his class, as evidenced by his law degree from Dartmouth University. However, his true passion lay not in law, but in helping people, caring for the sick, and making the world a better place. So, after graduating, he pursued a career in medicine at the University of Pittsburgh. During his 3rd year of residency at the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, William met Jennifer Hawke, an oncology nurse and co-director of the health center's pre-graduate internship program. They soon fell deeply in love, and those who knew them attested that they were perfect for each other. They married in 1985, and 4 years later, they welcomed their first daughter, Haley. The pregnancy spurred them to form a large family, leading them to purchase a house in Cheshire, Connecticut. On November 17, 1995, their second daughter, Michaela, was born. After giving birth, Jennifer resumed her work as a nurse and co-director of the internship. Sadly, she was later diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a disease that has no cure, which she fought against for the rest of her life. Despite this, her family remained supportive throughout. At just 10 years old, their eldest daughter began raising funds for the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, an endeavor that would yield significant sums over the years. Meanwhile, Michaela excelled academically and planned to take over the fundraising efforts when her sister went to college, enabling her to continue making a positive impact in her community. Having spent the summer learning to cook, she often delighted in preparing meals for her family. Tragically, this ordinary activity led to a fateful encounter with the perpetrator. On a July night in 2007, Michaela was preparing dinner for her family, but required additional ingredients for her recipe. So she and her mother went to the nearest market. Joshua Komisarjevsky, who had recently been released from prison, happened to be at the same location. Komisarjevsky's childhood was marked by trauma and complexity. Born to teenage parents, he was adopted by the Komisarjevsky family, a renowned European artistic dynasty, just a week after birth. His adoptive family was deeply religious and enforced strict discipline, which contributed to his struggles in school despite his high IQ. Eventually, his parents opted to homeschool him. During his trial, Komisarjevsky alleged that he was sexually abused by a cousin during childhood, but his family chose to keep the incident quiet. This traumatic experience likely contributed to the development of his rebellious and chaotic personality. By 14, Joshua Komisarjevsky had faced accusations of abusing his sister, and around this time he committed his first burglary, launching his career as a thief. In 2002, he was arrested for the first time on 18 counts of burglary and theft, earning him a 9-year prison sentence. During the trial, he made a chilling admission, revealing that he derived pleasure from listening to people while they slept and invading their privacy, feeding off their insecurity. Released on parole in 2007 at 27, officials deemed him a threat to society, a calculating criminal with perverted tendencies. But the jury disregarded these warnings, deeming Joshua fit for release. After his release, he moved into a halfway house for ex-convicts, where he encountered his future accomplice, Stephen Hayes. Hayes had a lengthy history of incarceration, starting at the age of 16 in 1980. Throughout the years, he was repeatedly arrested for violent robbery and burglary, earning him multiple sentences. In 2004, he received a prison sentence, only to be granted parole in 2006, which ultimately led him to the same residence where he crossed paths with Komisarjevsky. On the night of July 22, 2007, Michaela Petit was busily preparing dinner for her family, only to realize she needed additional ingredients to complete her recipe. She asked her mother to drive her to the nearest market to pick up the necessary items. What they didn't know was that they were being closely watched by Komisarjevsky, who took meticulous note of every detail, from the make and model of their vehicle to their facial features and Michaela's distinctive blonde hair. After finishing their shopping, the Petit family returned home, oblivious to the fact that they were being tailed. The family had a peaceful dinner, unaware it would be their last together. Later, while the others slept, William Petit dozed off in the living room. Suddenly, strange noises shattered the peace. William was attacked, beaten with a baseball bat, and left tied up in the basement. The intruders proceeded upstairs to locate Haley's room, where they found her asleep. Haley and her sister Michaela were bound to their bedposts by their hands and feet, their heads shrouded by pillowcases. In the master bedroom, Jennifer Petit slumbered peacefully. The intruders crept in and roused her effortlessly, swiftly restraining her hands and feet. With the family members under their control, the intruders took their time to survey the premises, even pausing to smoke cigarettes in the living room. After ransacking the home for jewelry, cash, and other valuables, they finally prepared to depart. As the Petits heard the burglars making their exit, they must have thought the ordeal was finally over. But, unbeknownst to them, their torment was only just beginning. After selling stolen items at a pawn shop, the ex-convicts were disappointed to find they hadn't gotten as much money as they had expected. Motivated by greed, they decided to return to the house. There, they found a check register with $40,000 and planned to steal $155,000. Before going back, they filled a couple of gasoline cans, which was captured on surveillance camera footage. Back at the house, they presented their plan to Jennifer, threatening to kill her entire family if she didn't cooperate. Desperate to protect her daughter, Jennifer agreed to accompany Stephen to the bank the next morning. Meanwhile, Joshua took advantage of Jennifer's absence by entering Michaela's room, where he untied her and began to undress her. He took photos with his cell phone and sexually assaulted her, recording the act. Afterwards, he took her to the bathroom to clean her and ensure no DNA evidence was left behind. Then, he ordered her to put her pajamas back on and tied her up again. The autopsy of Michaela later revealed evidence that Thomas Arvey had raped her. During the examination, State Medical Examiner Dr. Wayne Carver found Arvey's DNA in her body. At the bank, everything appeared normal, but Stephen was unaware of Jennifer's actions in the queue before she approached the teller. While waiting in line, Jennifer wrote a discreet note on a flyer asking for assistance. The note read, "My name is Jennifer Hawk Petit. I have $115,000 in my savings account, and I need to withdraw it. I'm in a desperate situation. My family is being held hostage and will be killed if I don't comply. Please, someone, call the police." Despite Jennifer not having any identification, the teller decided to give her the money. As soon as Jennifer received the cash, she left the bank and returned to the car where her captor was waiting. Meanwhile, the bank employee promptly called the police to report the incident. The manager informed the 911 dispatcher that Hawk Petit claimed the home invaders were being courteous, and that she believed their sole intention was to steal money. In response to the bank's alert, the Chester police carefully assessed the situation, establishing a discreet vehicle perimeter without alerting the intruders. With the situation now under surveillance, the police observed from a safe distance, opting not to intervene just yet. Joshua boasted to his accomplice about attacking Michaela, implying he'd do the same to Jennifer. Stephen restrained and undressed Jennifer while William, hearing her cries, yelled up and was told to calm down. Regaining consciousness, William freed himself, crawled to the stairs and escaped to the backyard, fearing they'd kill them all. Joshua went to check on William, only to discover that he had escaped. In her later confession, Hayes revealed that while she and Stephen were raping Hawk Petit on the living room floor, Komisarski burst in and announced that William had fled. Upon hearing this, Stephen strangled Jennifer to death, continuing to assault her even in her final moments. Shortly after, they heard William's cries for help. A neighbor, initially unaware of the traumatized boy's identity due to his severe injuries, called 911, realizing the police would soon arrive. To eliminate all evidence, the intruders doused Jennifer's lifeless body and parts of the house, including the daughter's bedrooms and their own clothing, with gasoline. Investigators later found traces of the accelerant on the Petit sisters' beds and the clothes they wore. Hayes and Komisarski set the house ablaze and fled, unaware that the authorities had set up a perimeter a few miles ahead. Within 5 minutes, they collided with a police vehicle, and after being surrounded, the two perpetrators were pulled from their car and arrested. They were immediately identified as ex-convicts. Meanwhile, the fire raging through the house was growing in intensity. An ambulance arrived, and Dr. William Petit, the gravely injured father, was rushed to the nearest hospital. Soon after, firefighters battled the blaze, and upon extinguishing it, they stumbled upon a horrific scene amidst the remnants of the house. The first body discovered was Jennifer's, her remains charred with remnants of rope bound to her ankles. Upon reaching the second floor, they found Michaela, still tied to her bed, having succumbed to the devastating flames. In a surprising twist, Haley had managed to break free from her restraints and attempted to escape, but sadly collapsed just a few meters away, overcome by the toxic smoke. William managed to free himself from his restraints, escape the house, and crawl to a neighbor's yard to seek help. The neighbor failed to recognize him at first, due to the severity of his injuries. Both Hayes and Komorowski confessed to the murders. During her interrogation, detectives noted that Hayes smelled of gasoline throughout. Each assailant accused the other of being the driving force and mastermind behind the home invasion. Komorowski's diary, later entered into evidence, revealed that he blamed William for the murders, calling him a coward and claiming that he could have saved his family if he had wanted to. The trial of Stephen Hayes began on September 13, 2010, with a jury comprising 7 women and 5 men. The defense argued that Joshua Komorowski was the mastermind behind the crime, responsible for escalating its violent nature, while prosecutors argued that both Hayes and Komorowski shared responsibility. After approximately 5 hours of deliberation on October 5th, the jury found Hayes guilty. The sentencing phase began on October 18th, with the jury initially divided over recommending life imprisonment or death. Hayes' defense argued that life imprisonment without parole would be a harsher punishment. On November 8th, the jury recommended the death sentence for Hayes on each of the 6 capital felony counts. Earlier, Hayes had attempted to negotiate a plea bargain for a life sentence, but prosecutors sought the death penalty. Dr. William Petit, the sole survivor, remarked on the verdict, while the Connecticut State Judicial Branch took the unprecedented step of offering post-traumatic stress assistance to jurors, acknowledging the trial's profoundly disturbing nature. This historic measure was necessitated by the jurors' 2-month exposure to graphic images and gruesome testimony during the triple murder trial, marking the first time the state judicial branch had provided such support. On December 2, 2010, Hayes expressed remorse for the suffering he had inflicted on the Petit family, stating that his own death would be a welcome relief and hoping it would bring peace and comfort to those he had hurt. Judge John Blue handed down 6 death sentences and an additional 106 years for other crimes. However, in August 2015, Hayes' death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment when Connecticut abolished capital punishment. The trial of Joshua Komorowski began on September 19, 2011. His lawyers offered a guilty plea in exchange for a life sentence, but prosecutors sought the death penalty, arguing that Komorowski was under Hayes' influence. Komorowski was found guilty on October 13, 2011, and the jury recommended the death penalty on December 9, 2011. During sentencing, Komorowski expressed shame and remorse for the harm caused, claiming he had not intended to kill anyone. Judge Blue set July 20, 2012 as Komorowski's execution date, underscoring his responsibility for the crime. However, like Hayes, Komorowski's death sentence was converted to life imprisonment in August 2015, following Connecticut's abolition of the death penalty. The trials and sentencing of Hayes and Komorowski represent a dark and pivotal chapter in Connecticut's legal history. The heinous nature of the crimes and the emotional toll on all involved, including the jurors, exposed the complexities and challenges of the legal system in dealing with such atrocious acts. Dr. Petit's statements during the trials poignantly highlighted the lasting impact of the crime on surviving family members and the community, which continues to pay tribute to the memory of the victims. The sole survivor, Dr. William Petit, was released from the hospital just 4 days after admission to attend his family's funeral. Tormented by guilt and the anguish of having survived, he later founded a foundation to aid children and young victims of violence, raising hundreds of thousands of dollars. He later pursued a career in politics, becoming a state representative as a member of the Republican Party. The brutal murders of the Petit family have had a profound and lasting impact on the community, which comes together every year to honor their memory. Lingering questions persist among family members and the public regarding whether the authorities responded adequately to the crisis, particularly with respect to the time spent observing the situation from a safe distance, which may have been critical in preventing the devastating outcome. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Alicia Ross. A young Canadian woman named Alicia Ross vanished without a trace from her own bedroom in the middle of the night. The police were unable to find either a body or any significant evidence, and as a result, the investigation merely stagnated. The case might have remained unsolved had the criminal not turned himself in to the police. Alicia Ross was born on February 8, 1980, in the Canadian city of Markham, in the province of Ontario. There is no information about her biological parents, but it is known that they gave up their rights to the child, and she was adopted at a few months old by a couple named Marvin and Sharon Ross. Her adoptive parents provided her with love and care, and they did everything to ensure that their daughter had everything she needed and could fully develop her talents. When Alicia started school, her adoptive parents decided to divorce, but they maintained a friendly relationship and continued to participate together in their daughter's life. Soon, Sharon remarried, and her new husband, named Julius Forrest, treated the child as if she were his own daughter. The girl performed well in school, demonstrated exceptional skills in drawing, and also developed a passion for photography and a love for discovering new cities and countries. After finishing school, she spent a year in Australia, where she traveled and enjoyed life before returning home and enrolling in university in the summer of 2005. The 25-year-old Alicia went on a hiking trip in the mountains with her friends, where she met a young man named Sean, with whom she began a romantic relationship in early July. He was 4 years older than her, but the small age difference did not bother the couple. On August 16th, the young woman, along with her adoptive mother and their dogs, went for a stroll in the park. Alicia appeared cheerful and shared that she was expecting a promotion at work to the position of senior sales manager in the coming days. She was very proud, as she had been working hard for a long time, and her efforts were about to be rewarded. Additionally, the young woman discussed her boyfriend, Sean, whom she had been dating for just over a month, but seemed deeply in love with. Alicia hoped that this romance could grow into something more meaningful in the future, and expressed a desire to introduce her new boyfriend to her adoptive parents by arranging a family dinner. After her walk in the park, the mother returned home, and her daughter went on a date with her sweetheart. She promised not to be gone long, as she had to get up early for work the next day, where her promotion was to be decided. The women said their goodbyes and went their separate ways. Sharon never saw her daughter alive again. The mysterious disappearance of her own house that night, after meeting with Sean, is what led to the unsolved case. Alicia invited him to her house, and they had a great time together. Around midnight, the young man went home, and Alicia accompanied him to the door, which served as a second exit from the backyard. They said goodbye with a kiss, and he left, promising to call her as soon as he got home. Around midnight, as promised, Sean called his girlfriend, but she didn't answer the phone. He wasn't overly concerned, thinking Alicia had simply fallen asleep since she had to get up early for work. However, the next morning, when he tried to call her again and she still didn't pick up, he became genuinely worried and contacted a mutual acquaintance who worked in the same office as Alicia. From her, he learned that Alicia hadn't come to work, and he immediately rushed to her house. On August 17th in the morning, Sharon and Julius planned to play golf with friends and left the house at 10. They saw their daughter's car in the driveway, but assumed someone had taken her, so they went about their day. A while later, Sean went to Alicia's house but couldn't find her, so he called the police to report her missing. He then called Sharon to inform her. The couple rushed home, where the police were already there. Sean was the first to notice Alicia was missing and informed the police. He was also the last to see her, the night before she disappeared, saying they had parted ways at the gate around midnight and hadn't heard from her since. When Sharon and Julius approached the house, law enforcement was already there, inspecting the area and speaking with Sean, who had called them. The young man appeared visibly nervous and distraught. When the mother looked into Alicia's room, she immediately noticed that all her daughter's personal belongings, which she never left the house without, were in their places. Her purse, passport, driver's license, keys, cell phone, as well as her bank cards and cash, were all left in the room, suggesting she wouldn't have gone anywhere, let alone left without them. The gate was open but not forced, implying that the missing person either let her abductor in or willingly left with someone from the yard. In the backyard, the police found some disturbance. The lawn and flowers in one area were trampled, as if someone had fallen there. Also, a pair of cigarettes and the right sandal of the girl, the one she had been wearing the evening before, were found on the ground, laid out in a straight line. Neither Alicia nor her parents smoked, so the cigarettes did not belong to them, and Sean claimed he never smoked that particular brand, leaving the ownership and arrangement of the cigarettes unclear. Sean was almost immediately considered the prime suspect. Firstly, he was noticeably nervous, and his account seemed somewhat confused and disjointed. Secondly, he was the first to report his girlfriend's disappearance to the police, even before speaking with her parents and confirming that they too had not seen her. Thus, he definitely knew she was missing. Additionally, law enforcement found biological traces on the girl's bed belonging both to her and Sean. Based on this, the investigation speculated that Alicia might have denied Sean intimacy, and he decided to force her, then trying to cover his tracks, staged her disappearance, which he likely caused by ending her life. When Sean was brought to the police station, questioned, and the investigator's theory presented to him, the young man was shocked. He was distressed to be considered the primary suspect and swore he would never harm his girlfriend, as he loved her. He also acknowledged that they did indeed have intimate moments that evening, but insisted it was consensual. The missing girl's parents also had nothing negative to say about Sean. He had not argued with their daughter, had not mistreated her, and she spoke only positively of him. Their relationship was developing quickly and quite happily, to the extent that Alicia even hoped to have a future with him. Moreover, the parents noted that their daughter had no plans or reasons to leave. She was eagerly awaiting a promotion at her beloved job, and being a responsible person, she would never just leave everything behind. But even if some unforeseen circumstances had arisen, she would certainly have informed her parents and definitely would not have left without her documents, money, and phone. The police lacked sufficient evidence or grounds to detain Sean, and so, after questioning him at the station, they released him. Nevertheless, law enforcement did not rule him out as a suspect and continued to monitor the young man. Sean himself appeared dejected and highly distressed. The extensive search effort for the missing woman began the day after her disappearance. Initially, a thorough inspection of the home and yard was conducted, and investigators closely examined the surrounding area and interviewed neighbors. However, no one reported hearing or seeing anything suspicious that night. Law enforcement theorized that the woman disappeared sometime between midnight, when she said goodbye to Sean, and sunrise, a time when the streets are usually quiet and deserted, making it challenging to find witnesses. Alicia's photos were distributed as flyers throughout the city, providing phone numbers for people to report any information about her whereabouts. The story of the missing woman was widely covered in the news and featured in popular publications, sparking significant public interest and prompting hundreds of volunteers and concerned citizens to join the search. The police received numerous daily calls related to the case, although most of the information turned out to be false or mistaken. Nevertheless, each tip and theory was investigated in the hope of finding any leads. The search area was continuously expanded, involving more people. Thorough checks were conducted in abandoned buildings, wooded areas, and wastelands. Sean also actively participated in the search efforts, despite still being the prime suspect. Feeling wronged, the young man turned to the media and gave a significant interview where he expressed his deep love for Alicia and showed photos of them looking very happy together. He tearfully pleaded for help in the search, appearing utterly devastated by the situation. The search for Alicia became one of the most extensive operations in Ontario's history. Every difficult-to-reach ravine and marshy area was scoured, but no clues, leads, or even hints about the missing woman's location were found. Her parents also appealed to the public through the media, expressing their belief that their daughter was alive but being held against her will somewhere. They implored whoever had their daughter to let her return home unharmed and not to harm her in any way. Sean's unexpected arrest led the police to lean towards the theory that someone Alicia knew personally had abducted and possibly ended her life. This hypothesis was supported by the lack of signs of struggle, no evidence of forced entry, and the gate being left open, but no concrete leads were found. The cigarettes found on the ground bore only a heavily smeared fingerprint, which couldn't be identified. Investigators thoroughly checked Alicia's contacts and reviewed all calls and messages on her phone and email, yet nothing suspicious was uncovered. On the 6th day of the search, the case was officially reclassified as a criminal act, despite the lack of evidence. Sean remained the prime suspect. Sean lived alone in his own house, located about 10 miles from Alicia's home. After realizing that public suspicion had intensified following his media appearance, he stopped participating in the search and refused to speak with the press. Investigators interviewed Sean 3 more times, but his story remained consistent. He was then offered a lie detector test, which he refused, convincing the police even more firmly that he was involved in the crime. 2 weeks after the disappearance, Sean was arrested on an unrelated charge. He was taken into custody late at night for driving under the influence and resisting arrest. Speculations arose that he was attempting to drown his guilt in alcohol. Following Sean's arrest, Alicia's parents gave another interview, sharing that they had not personally known the young man and only knew about him through their daughter's accounts. They believed she was happy, but now they considered the possibility that their daughter might have withheld certain details to avoid upsetting them, though she had planned to introduce her boyfriend to her family soon. Police interviewed Sean's neighbors to determine if they had noticed anything unusual recently, such as him disposing of large trash bags, behaving suspiciously, leaving unexpectedly, or cleaning his car. However, no significant information emerged from these inquiries. Detectives were left hoping that Sean might eventually confess to everything. About a month after Alicia's disappearance, the media attention surrounding her case began to fade. The search continued, but it was no longer prominently featured in newspapers or news broadcasts, and the investigation seemed to have reached a dead end. The only option left for law enforcement was to keep pressuring Sean, hoping he would eventually confess to the crime. Then, a completely unexpected development occurred in the case on September 20, 2005, more than a month after Alicia's disappearance. 31-year-old Daniel Sylvester, a local resident, called the police and confessed to ending the girl's life, revealing where he had hidden her body. It's important to note that this man had not been under suspicion previously, and the police had not considered him at all during their initial investigation. At first, it appeared that the man merely sought fame and attention, and had decided to take responsibility for the most notorious case in recent years. However, all doubts were dispelled when the police discovered the girl's body at the location he had specified. Daniel Sylvester was an unemployed recluse who lived in his mother's house, which was adjacent to the Ross family home. The two properties were separated by overgrown shrubs, creating a nearly impenetrable barrier. Despite living virtually side by side for their entire lives, Daniel and the victims had never interacted before. Alicia had seen Daniel on his property a few times and considered him mentally unwell due to his strange behavior. The police had not shown an interest in Daniel earlier, as he seemed to be a reclusive and isolated individual who had not drawn attention to himself. Daniel had significant social challenges from a young age. He struggled to make friends, was ridiculed at school, and every effort to form relationships ended in complete failure, leading him to develop a deep resentment towards women. As a child, girls would call him a loser and say they would never associate with someone like him. At age 8, Sylvester was diagnosed with a social behavioral disorder and had been under ongoing psychological treatment, but the therapy did not provide much improvement. In his teenage years, he confessed that he had fantasies of suddenly attacking and overpowering a girl, which excited him. However, specialists were confident that these fantasies would remain just that, and not manifest into real actions. After finishing school, Daniel stopped attending therapy sessions, decided not to continue his education, and became a recluse. He lived in his mother's house, isolating himself from the outside world, spending his days sitting in his room, often on adult websites, and occasionally venturing out in the evenings to secretly watch his neighbors, peeping into their windows. He particularly enjoyed watching when someone was engaged in sexual activity, as this spectacle excited him, yet Daniel remained a virgin well into his 30s, satisfying his desires through solitary activities. The neighbors hardly ever saw him, and thus considered him a harmless guy. Initially, Sylvester claimed that the girl's death was accidental, and he hid the body to avoid punishment. According to him, when he realized the girl showed no signs of life, he placed her in the trunk of his mother's car and drove about 50 miles out of town, hiding the body in a bushy ravine by the side of a country road. 3 weeks later, fearing that the body would be discovered, he moved it in the middle of the night even further away to a deserted area. The body was found in the place Daniel indicated, thereby dispelling the last doubts about his guilt. However, the condition of the remains indicated that the girl had been dealt with extreme cruelty. The injuries were such that it looked as if she had been hit by a car. An autopsy showed that Alicia had nearly all her ribs broken, her neck and both arms, and also suffered extensive closed cranial trauma with internal bleeding. The exact cause of death could not be determined, but at least 3 injuries were incompatible with life. Forensic experts were shocked, as they had never encountered anything like it before. It was necessary to clarify the circumstances and chronology of events on that fateful evening to determine how exactly the girl received her injuries. The convict initially claimed that he had an argument with his neighbor on a bush-covered path between their homes. During the verbal altercation, the neighbor called him a loser, which angered him, and he struck her on the head. When she fell, he kicked her several times in the chest. Realizing she was not breathing, he decided to hide the body and then moved it again when the search area expanded. However, there were missing details and specifics in his story that did not add up. It was unclear what Daniel was doing at his neighbor's house at night, why they began arguing, and what caused such a brutal beating. The evidence found at the scene was laid out in a straight line, making it challenging to reconstruct the full sequence of events. The investigation revealed that Sylvester had gone out to observe his neighbors. He noticed that Alicia's boyfriend had come over, and he approached their house closely as the couple was being intimate. He watched them from a window, then moved back to the bushes but did not leave. As midnight approached, the lovers went outside and kissed by the gate, just a couple of feet away from the observing neighbor. When Sean left, the girl returned to the yard and noticed Daniel. She became very angry, realizing that he had been spying on her and her boyfriend all this time. She started yelling at him, calling him a pervert and demanding that he leave immediately. Finally, Alicia called him a loser, which acted as a trigger for Sylvester, as that was exactly what other girls had called him during his childhood. Filled with rage, Sylvester punched the girl forcefully on the head and knocked her to the ground. She tried to resist and grabbed her attacker's hair, but he began to choke her. When his grip loosened, Daniel quickly stood up and began kicking Alicia while she was lying down, primarily striking her chest, back, neck, and head. Forensic experts later counted 33 fractures on the victim's body, and extensive internal bleeding. When the man realized his neighbor was dead, he moved her body to his garage, undressed her, and then masturbated to relieve the tension, according to his testimony. The examination confirmed that Sylvester did not violate the body. He then placed the corpse in the trunk of his mother's car and took it to a remote location outside the city. Upon returning home, the criminal took a shower, changed clothes, and behaved as if nothing had happened. His clothes, the victim's belongings, and the towels he used to clean the crime scene were packed in trash bags and disposed of. The trial and sentencing proceedings began only in April 2007, at which time new details were made public. The defendant confessed that he had ended his neighbor's life, but he and his lawyer insisted that it was unintentional. The defense demanded a psychiatric evaluation, arguing that Daniel was mentally ill and should not be held accountable for his actions, suggesting he be treated in a clinic instead of being incarcerated. However, the prosecution argued that despite his mental illness and anger management issues, Sylvester acted with full knowledge of the consequences of his actions. He kicked the girl mercilessly with all his might, knowing it would likely result in her death. Nevertheless, the court-ordered psychiatric evaluation confirmed that the defendant could indeed be considered fully responsible for his actions. Regarding the items found in the backyard, Daniel never admitted to having placed them there, arranged in a straight line. On May 7, 2007, the defendant was found guilty of a second-degree crime and sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 16 years. A year later, Canadian singer-songwriter Kathleen Edwards wrote a song titled Alicia Ross, which portrayed the events from the young woman's perspective during the final moments of her life. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lauren Stewart. Lauren Stewart, a 45-year-old woman, seemed to live a life of perfection. She was a devoted wife to Dan, a caring mother to her adult children, Stephen and Bethany, and it appeared that she had been blessed by fate. However, in the weeks leading up to her unimaginable act, she ventured into a dark world, exploring disturbing content on YouTube and researching methods to end her own life, eventually becoming skilled in the use of a Glock handgun. Lauren Devine. Stewart was born on January 9, 1973, and she spent most of her life in Michigan. Her work history included part-time personal training at the YMCA in Farmington Hills and occasional house cleaning. After leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses, she had pursued modeling and acting, exploring her creative side through workshops and networking with photographers. She was regarded as a charming and very pleasant woman. Lauren was married to a man named Daniel Stewart, who worked at the University of Michigan as a leading software architect, dedicated to developing technology for predicting heart attacks. He had many years of experience as a code developer in the technology industry. Together with his wife, they were devout Christians within the Jehovah's Witness denomination for an extended period until 2013, when they decided to explore and take a different approach to their spiritual life. The couple had two accomplished children, 27-year-old Stephen, a data solution architect, and 24-year-old Bethany, a computer whiz who showcased her talents in art and graphic design. At 45, Lauren Stewart had it all: a flourishing husband, two college-educated children, a budding modeling career, and a charming Keogh Harbor home adorned with a welcoming heart wreath on the door. However, beneath this facade of perfection, she grappled with a hidden pain. Lauren had experienced the heartache of exclusion and rejection from the religion she and her husband Daniel had embraced just a few years earlier. Lauren and her husband decided to leave the Jehovah's Witness faith, a Christian denomination known for its strict indoctrination and the practice of shunning former members. The seemingly perfect exterior concealed a complex web of emotions and decisions that would soon unfold into a captivating narrative. Up until 2013, Lauren and her family had been devout Jehovah's Witnesses, strictly adhering to beliefs that eschewed celebrations like birthdays, Easter, Christmas, or any other event they believed contradicted the teachings of Christ. Additionally, their faith strongly discouraged higher education, putting Stephen and Bethany at risk of being excommunicated if they pursued college. However, Dan envisioned a brighter future for their children through higher education. When they sought approval from the church elders to allow their kids to pursue degrees, the response was firm: disobey the church's policies and face disfellowship. This threat weighed heavily on the Stewart, as almost everyone they knew, including their extended family, were part of the congregation. According to the church's rules, excommunication would mean complete isolation, even from their own flesh and blood. After careful consideration, the Stewart made a bold decision to leave the religion they had long embraced. Although it initially felt right, the community's disapproval became unbearable, especially for Lauren. She described how routine tasks like grocery shopping were marred by dirty looks and hurtful comments from people she once believed were her friends, even though the belittling remarks were not directed at her. Living in a small community of just 3,300 residents, many of whom were Jehovah's Witnesses, the Stewarts struggled with the reality that the church-approved members would constantly remind them of their outcast status whenever they had the chance. This emotional burden became too much to bear, leading to a breaking point, and in search of a lifeline, Lauren turned to the gym, making it a regular part of her life to rebuild her physical and mental well-being. Her remarkable transformation allowed her to secure a job as a fitness instructor, and she was even able to leverage her natural beauty to become a successful model, surprising those who crossed her path. During this period, Laura seemed pleasant and optimistic despite her church's rejection. However, beneath her confident facade, she was deeply and immensely suffering from chronic depression, an affliction that had plagued her even before the shunning intensified with each passing day. In a desperate attempt to mask her inner turmoil, she would occasionally let glimpses of her distress show through, only to quickly conceal them with a forced smile. One of Laura's most closely guarded secrets was the family's crippling debt, which was pushing them to the brink of ruin. Confronted with this dual onslaught of financial and emotional distress, she devised a plan to resolve all her problems at once. Haunted by her inner turmoil, Lauren Stewart's downward spiral was deeply chilling and heartbreaking. She delved into grim research, scouring YouTube for methods of ending her own life and instructional videos on handling a handgun, all leading up to a fateful day on February 15th, 2018. She left a poignant note on the dinner table, meticulously tidied the home, and texted her loved ones, as well as her husband's boss, just before the unthinkable act. At 9:24 a.m., she turned over all the family photos on a secretary desk and sent a message to her husband's boss, stating that Dan had an accident and died. The boss reached out for further details but received no response. Hours later, at 5:07 p.m. on the same day, she reached out to her cousin, confessing that she had become evil. She stated that she had taken her husband and kids with her so they would not have to feel the impact of her selfish act, and that they would sleep until Christ resurrects them. Her cousin responded, urging her not to proceed with her plan. Lauren had become increasingly detached from reality in recent months. Unbeknownst to her family, she had a pistol in her possession and had tragically decided to use it against the very people she professed to love. Her first victim was her husband, 47-year-old Dan, whom she shot in the head as he attempted to flee. With her most significant threat eliminated, she went upstairs to her 24-year-old daughter Bethany's room, where Bethany was asleep, and ended her daughter's life without hesitation. Next, her son Stephen, who lived in his own place across town, unknowingly arrived at the family home, lured by false pretenses. With his back turned, unaware of the imminent danger, Lauren, the mother he loved, shot him at point-blank range. The horrifying scene didn't end there, as Lauren took the life of the family dog, placing its body in the bathtub. A neighbor had heard these shots, but assumed someone was slamming doors. The house became a chilling temporary morgue. and Lauren meticulously tidied up. The darkness culminated as Lauren turned the gun on herself, using a method she had researched online. The cousin who Lauren had texted tried texting her back, but Lauren never responded. The next morning, on February 16th, the cousin went over to her house with a friend, and when they received no response at the door, they contacted the police for a check. When the police arrived at the house that morning, the kitchen was organized, the refrigerator was stocked, and handwritten labels were on various items, with a calendar hanging on the refrigerator. Their discovery began with the family dog in the bathtub, triggering a chilling response from the officers who feared there was an active shooter. They found Stephen Stewart on the floor, believed to have been shot while seated on a chair in another room. Bethany lay lifeless, shot in her sleep with a pillow muffling the sound. Dan Stewart was discovered on the basement floor in front of a couch, his right hand still in his jeans pocket. The slightly pulled white pocket liner on his left pocket suggested he was standing when he was shot and attempted to react, thus pulling the pocket liner. Upstairs, Lauren was discovered at the base of the stairs, a pistol by her side, her self-inflicted wound between the eyes echoing her online research. 2 notes were found on the dinner table. One was for the medical examiner, while the other, a chilling suicide note, exposed Lauren's inner turmoil. She wrote, "I allowed evil into my heart when I chose not to accept God's free love, and it made me sick inside. I killed my family because I know my death would stumble them. At least now they will not suffer, and will be resurrected to life forever in peace." As the police investigated the Stewarts' lives, a complex and puzzling picture began to emerge. Interviews with family, friends, and neighbors described the couple as reclusive, with a sense of estrangement after leaving the Jehovah's Witness church. Lauren's past was marked by her own personal challenges, and some family members said she suffered from depression, which was further exacerbated by the demands of motherhood. In recent years, she became increasingly fixated on religion, often engaging in impassioned outbursts. Her family members, including her father and sister, revealed the extent of the emotional distance that had grown over time, and they had not spoken to her in years. Her mother had passed away when she was 13 years old. Estranged for years, they saw Dan as the catalyst pulling Lauren away from them, and never really cared about him. They also shared troubling insights about the couple's mental health, characterizing their relationship as a fusion of mutual distress. To those who knew Lauren, her defiance of the Jehovah's Witness faith marked her as an apostate, a label that spoke to her outspoken opposition to the organization and her decision to leave it. The heart-wrenching tragedy left a deep scar on the lives of those who knew the family intimately. Joyce Taylor, a longtime family friend, was visibly shaken, believing that the murders were a direct consequence of the Stewarts' rejection by the Jehovah's Witnesses. Taylor and other former members shed light on the harsh reality of leaving the faith. They explained that once you depart from the church, even your own family members who remain within its fold are forbidden from interacting with you, a severe form of shunning that takes a heavy emotional toll. According to Taylor, Lauren and Daniel's desire to provide their children with a college education clashed head-on with the religion's teachings, which frowned upon such pursuits. The collision between their aspirations and the rigid doctrines of their faith set the stage for a tragic unraveling. They were shunned everywhere and every way possible. As Taylor said, if Lauren went to the grocery store, they didn't look her in the eye. When you're raised a Jehovah's Witness, they choose your friends, they choose who you associate with, and if you go against that, they will disfellowship you or shun you. In a shocking turn of events, Joyce Taylor stormed into a Kingdom Hall meeting in Union Lake, seizing the moment to confront the congregation. Standing on a chair, she boldly criticized the gathering, her voice resonating with a mix of anger and sorrow. "Excuse me, everyone," she declared. "My name is Joyce Taylor. 2 days ago, 4 people died as a result of your shunning process." Taylor's outburst sent shockwaves through the room, as she pushed away congregants and vented her pent-up frustration, shouting, "5 years ago, you people pulled your support from this small family. The only support they had was you people. You turned them away, and you shunned them. And for what?" she exclaimed. "Because they wanted to raise their children as they saw fit." The police were aware of the family's issues with their former church, but declined to comment. Police records detailed how Lauren had recorded a poignant 2-minute video on February 6th at 11 p.m., explaining the depths of her despair. She cited a multitude of issues, expressing her inability to carry on and her desire not to burden others any longer. Abandoned by her church family, Lauren found herself drowning in a relentless sea of despair, with what she believed to be the only escape, death. Convinced that ending her own life was the solution to her unbearable suffering, she made the agonizing choice to also take the lives of her loved ones, sparing them what she perceived as the inevitable shame and suffering that her actions would bring upon their household. Police records painted a grim picture of Lauren's mental state in the lead-up to the tragedy, noting her unmistakable signs of severe depression and increasingly abnormal behavior. It appeared that she had immersed herself in a personal interpretation of religion, intensifying her depression. Shockingly, she never sought professional help or counseling, and no prescription drugs or alcohol were found in her system. However, traces of marijuana were discovered not just in Lauren's system, but also in her husband and sons. The police investigation unraveled a complex web of factors contributing to her devastating actions. Loneliness, the severed ties with family and friends over religious differences, and deep-seated emotional scars stemming from alleged childhood sexual abuse, all converging to amplify her anguish and ultimately driving her to commit the unthinkable. In a striking testament to the estrangement within the family, Lauren's sister's response spoke volumes. She exhibited a somber demeanor and expressed a surprising lack of surprise when hearing the news of her sister's actions, demonstrating just how far Lauren had drifted from her own sister, who even showed little regret about the tragedy. While the motives behind Lauren Stewart's horrifying actions may have been due to the profound isolation imposed by her former church and her childhood trauma, it begs the question: could things have taken a different turn had she reached out for help when she felt suffocated by her circumstances? Tragically, rather than seeking counseling or professional guidance, Lauren chose a path of self-destruction with devastating consequences for all involved. As we reflect on this heartbreaking tale, our thoughts are with the victims whose lives were tragically cut short and the loved ones they left behind. Friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Natalie Connolly. In the picturesque English countryside, a story of love and betrayal took a tragic turn, leaving a young mother's life in jeopardy. This is the story of Natalie Connolly, a tale of domestic abuse, resilience, and the pursuit of justice amidst unimaginable cruelty. Natalie, a devoted mother and partner, found herself trapped in a cycle of abuse that would culminate in a harrowing ordeal. Her story stands as a stark reminder of the hidden dangers lurking behind closed doors and the courage required to break free from the shackles of domestic violence. Natalie Connolly was a captivating beauty, both in appearance and charm. Her identical twin sister shared her lovely looks and deep connection. Natalie had a natural talent for bringing joy to others, easily sparking laughter and engaging in conversation with everyone she met. Despite the challenges of being a single parent, Natalie was wholly devoted to ensuring her daughter Madison had everything she needed. Natalie's unwavering dedication as a mother was evident in her constant presence and adoration for Madison, which fostered a strong admiration from her daughter. In a bustling bar, Natalie met John, a charming and debonair man who immediately caught her eye. Their connection was instantaneous, drawn together by an undeniable magnetic pull. Despite John being in his late 30s, his charm and wit quickly captivated Natalie's heart. Before long, they exchanged contact details, eager to explore their budding connection and spend more time together. Natalie found herself irresistibly attracted to John from the moment they met, though initially unaware of his occupation or wealth. As they grew closer, John revealed his status as a multi-millionaire, a fact reinforced by his extravagant displays of affection. Lavish gifts flowed freely from his generous hand, and their evenings together were filled with luxurious dinners at high-end restaurants. His opulent mansion seemed to be plucked from a fairy tale, leaving Natalie spellbound by his refined and gentlemanly demeanor. Contrary to the charming facade John projected, he harbored a trove of hidden truths. It soon came to light that John's life was far more complex than he had let on. Amidst his engagement to a pregnant partner, with whom he anticipated their second child, John concealed the existence of 3 additional children. His involvement with Natalie was revealed to be an affair that persisted even as he navigated the dissolution of his prior relationship, ultimately choosing to redirect his focus towards her. Their romance unfolded like pages from a fairy tale from the onset. John and Madison formed an instant bond, while Natalie effortlessly won over John's children, showering her with lavish gifts and luxuries like spa days and a personal chauffeur. John seemed to fulfill every dream imaginable, yet amidst the opulence, reality set in. When Natalie moved in with John on his estate in Kinver, Staffordshire, England, their relationship was initially fueled by passion. However, living together revealed the true nature of their dynamic. True understanding emerges when you share every aspect of your daily lives. John's preferences leaned heavily towards the rougher side, reminiscent of scenes from the 50 Shades of Grey series, much to Natalie's discomfort. He derived pleasure from causing her pain during intimate moments, often leaving visible evidence of his aggression in the form of bruises and cuts. The extravagant dinners and romantic gestures began to lose their appeal when Natalie realized the steep emotional costs they came with. What once seemed like a fairy tale now bore the stark reality of a tumultuous relationship. Despite her reservations, Natalie reluctantly acquiesced to John's demands during their intense encounters, driven by a fear of abandonment similar to what he had done to his pregnant ex-fiancée. Despite struggling with this significant issue, she found contentment within the relationship and hesitated to leave, fearing a return to the monotony of her previous life. Seeking solace and guidance, she confided in her sister and mother, revealing the wounds and bruises that bore witness to John's violent tendencies during their intense sexual encounters. While acknowledging John's prowess in the bedroom, she also disclosed the distressing reality of his penchant for inflicting pain. Natalie found herself torn between the pleasure John provided and the harm he caused. She was caught in a dilemma, struggling to reconcile her desire to maintain the lavish lifestyle with John and her dissatisfaction with the intimate aspect of their relationship. Signs of strain became apparent as both Natalie and John sought connections outside their partnership. John engaged in conversations with other women, while Natalie also found herself messaging other men. When John uncovered Natalie's exchanges, his reaction was one of fury. While he didn't hesitate to pursue interactions with women himself, he vehemently opposed Natalie's involvement with other men, revealing a glaring double standard in their relationship dynamic. However, he remained silent, masking any signs of unease. On December 18, 2016, John proposed what seemed like a normal evening together: drinks, watching a football game, and sharing supper. He ensured Natalie had an abundance of alcohol and even provided cocaine, though to a lesser extent than he consumed himself. This wasn't the first time he had orchestrated such a scenario, suggesting a pattern of behavior aimed at loosening her up before subjecting her to his despicable actions once they were alone at home. Natalie's heavy drinking on these occasions may have been an attempt to numb herself to the anticipated pain she knew she would endure once behind closed doors with John. For him, maintaining absolute control was paramount, ensuring he could fully indulge in his intentions towards Natalie without compromising his faculties. He meticulously regulated his alcohol intake, aiming to achieve a state of mild intoxication that wouldn't impede his actions during their sexual encounters. Following a seemingly delightful day out, culminating in a satisfying meal at one of their favorite establishments, John arranged for their driver to transport them home. However, beneath the facade of normalcy lurked John's sinister and malevolent intentions for that day. Natalie's intoxication was clearly evident, and the meal had not helped sober her up or absorb the alcohol. Disoriented, she stumbled out of the car upon their arrival home, inadvertently leaving her phone behind. The responsible course of action would have been to provide her with water and guide her to bed to sleep it off. However, John Broadhurst had far darker intentions in mind. Upon the driver's return with Natalie's phone, it remains unclear whether John accessed her messages. Subsequent toxicological testing and autopsy results painted a grim picture of Natalie's state. Despite her incapacitation, John was resolute in his desire for retribution, disregarding any potential consequences. Natalie became the unwilling recipient of his brutal advances, as he orchestrated her suffering to inflict maximum harm. He subjected her to a barrage of violence, including punches, kicks, stomps, and the act of throwing bleach at her face and genitals. To compound her agony, he used a bottle of carpet cleaner as a weapon, twisting and tearing at her. Once he had finished his cruel assault, he abandoned Natalie, naked and blooded, at the base of the stairs, her skirt pulled up around her waist, left to succumb to her injuries. She lay in a pool of her own blood as John callously retreated to bed. Hours later, upon awakening, he discovered Natalie lifeless, having succumbed to the numerous horrific wounds inflicted upon her, totaling a staggering 40. John's subsequent actions, including his unconvincing performance during the emergency call for an ambulance, revealed his warped psychological state. His detachment and lack of remorse were chillingly evident as he casually informed the operator of his futile attempts at CPR, referring to Natalie's lifeless state with callous indifference. Following Natalie's pronounced death, he was apprehended by authorities. In a feeble attempt to justify his heinous deeds, he offered the excuse of rough sex gone too far, claiming innocence and alleging that Natalie had actively consented to the extreme acts inflicted upon her. According to John's twisted narrative, Natalie purportedly requested the injuries, the violence, and even the insertion of the carpet cleaning bottle into her body, and she purportedly reassured him amidst the blood and pain. He claimed that she reassured him of her well-being and expressed a desire for more of the same, painting himself as a mere pawn in her tragic demise. John attempted to deflect responsibility by asserting that Natalie willingly participated in rough sexual activities, claiming they had engaged in similar encounters numerous times without issue. When questioned about leaving her partially clothed at the foot of the stairs, he offered the feeble excuse that it was a routine occurrence and that he had never provided blankets, as the house was consistently warm throughout the proceedings. John displayed a notable absence of remorse or contrition, instead placing blame squarely on Natalie's shoulders. Despite being found guilty of manslaughter, he received a lenient sentence of 3 years and 8 months, serving only 22 months before regaining his freedom. The Natalie Connolly case sparked widespread criticism, leading Fiona Mackenzie to launch the "We Can't Consent to This" movement. Mackenzie aims to ignite discussions on sexual assault and eliminate the rough sex defense, which trivializes violence in relationships. However, some still accept the court's decision, viewing it as an isolated incident rather than a systemic issue, risking victim blaming. This highlights the need for advocacy and education to challenge harmful narratives and support survivors. The rough sex murder defense was unequivocally prohibited with the passage of the Domestic Abuse Bill by Parliament on July 6, 2020, following the granting of royal assent on April 29, 2021. The Domestic Abuse Act of 2021 represents a crucial step forward in addressing and combating domestic violence, ensuring that perpetrators can no longer exploit such harmful defenses to justify their actions. Natalie's untimely death left a profound void in the lives of her family and friends, who continue to grapple with the pain of her loss. Their unwavering love and support for Natalie serve as a testament to her enduring spirit. In the aftermath, the community rallied together to raise awareness about domestic abuse and to support survivors in their journey towards healing and recovery. Their solidarity and compassion stand as a beacon of hope in the face of unspeakable tragedy. Though Natalie Connolly's life was tragically cut short, her memory lives on in the hearts of all who knew and loved her. May her story inspire us to stand against domestic abuse and to offer support to those in need. Friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Megan Landowski. The case of Megan Landowski, who lived near the Chesapeake Bay in Portsmouth, Virginia, a bustling seaport town that is home to both the U.S. Navy and Coast Guard. Megan's family included Navy officer Chris Short, his wife Angela, and their three stepchildren, Elizabeth Gable, Megan Landowski, and Corey Landowski. Having spent a year stationed at the naval base in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, Chris was transferred to a naval hospital in Portsmouth, which was a relief for his family. Megan Landowski, the eldest sibling at 16 years old, promptly enrolled in dance classes after their relocation. Megan had a deep passion for dance and exhibited remarkable talent and aptitude from the beginning, starting with ballet and quickly expanding her repertoire to include various dance genres. Her mother described her as beautiful, friendly, and talented, and Megan easily integrated into her new academic environment at Woodrow Wilson High School. Megan had a magnetic personality that effortlessly attracted classmates, allowing her to quickly forge friendships. Although she attended a prestigious high school primarily focused on dance, Megan expressed a desire to attend a regular high school in order to be with friends from her neighborhood. Described as vivacious and kind, Megan had a natural inclination for making connections and embracing friendships with everyone she encountered. Thursday, April 10th, 2008, dawned like any other bright spring morning. Megan woke up early from school, engaging in a conversation with her mother regarding an impending test before heading off for her classes. After exchanging farewells, they went their separate ways, unaware that this would be the last time Angela laid eyes on her daughter alive. Megan's school day ended early, and she went home. Her mother told her to call when she reached home. Upon arrival, Megan left a voicemail detailing how her day went, reassuring her mother of her safe return, and ending by telling her she loved her. She then went on to begin preparing lunch for herself. However, things took a dark and disturbing turn around 4 p.m. that afternoon. Chris, Megan's stepfather, returned home to find the front door open. Though initially unconcerned, knowing Megan had been warned about leaving it open, he intended to reprimand her. Calling out her name yielded only silence as he moved through the house. Upon entering the kitchen, he was confronted with a harrowing sight. Megan, lifeless on the floor, a victim of murder. Chris would later recall how he found her, likening her to a porcelain doll, hauntingly still and staring out into the void. Local detective Doug Funkhauser was on his way to celebrate his anniversary with his wife when he received the distressing call about a young girl's murder in town. Rushing to Roberts Court in Portsmouth, he was confronted with a horrifying sight. Blood stains on the door handle caught his attention as he approached the residence. Inside, in the kitchen, he discovered the gruesome scene. The teenager's partially naked body sprawled on the floor. Megan lay amidst a sizable pool of blood, bearing multiple stab wounds across her back, neck, face, and throat, with her mouth sealed shut with tape. For Detective Funkhauser, a seasoned investigator, this case stood out as one of the most brutal he had ever encountered, compounded by the fact that the victim was a young child. The thought of his own 3 children intensified his determination to bring the perpetrator to justice. Despite Megan not inviting the killer into her house, there were no signs of forced entry. However, a leaf found inside, traced back to the bush by the window, showed that the assailant had entered through the first-floor window. The attack started in an upstairs bedroom, evident from the messy bed that indicated a struggle. Her underwear was on the floor, and a tape dispenser under the left corner of the bed matched the tape used to bind her. Blood-stained tape was collected for analysis. Police took pillows, sheets, and blankets for forensic examination. Disturbing evidence was found in the bedroom. Seminal fluid on the duvet and in Megan's underwear suggested she was sexually assaulted before the brutal attack downstairs. Megan had 43 stab wounds, 11 after her death. She was discovered naked from the waist down, with her arms bound behind her with tape. The forensic team quickly identified the potential murder weapon. They found a knife missing from the kitchen counter holder, eventually locating it in the sink. Megan was first attacked in her room, but escaped downstairs before being fatally assaulted. The perpetrator moved through the house, leaving footprints, and washed their hands in the sink, leaving behind one of the 2 knives used in the murder. The other knife, taken from the kitchen block, was found in a storm drain nearby. Detectives realized they had to apprehend the murderer promptly. The investigation began swiftly, with officers thoroughly searching the area, looking for witnesses who may have seen or heard something suspicious during the crime. Unfortunately, no one provided any useful information, and it seemed like the culprit had fled unnoticed. The town was gripped by fear, with parents worried about their children's safety, many too scared to sleep at night, aware that a killer was on the loose. After their daughter's murder, Angela and Chris quickly told the police they suspected Robert Hickey, a friend of Chris from the Navy who had a troubled past. When Megan was 16, Robert, who also worked with Chris, sexually assaulted her. Megan started acting differently and doing poorly in school. Chris noticed and asked her what was wrong. Eventually, Megan admitted that Robert was abusing her. Chris was angered and disgusted, immediately cutting off all connections with the Hickey family and reporting the abuse. At this point, Megan's parents had initiated legal action just 5 months before her murder, with a trial awaiting. They now suspected that Robert had killed Megan to prevent her from testifying against him, fearing the potential damage to his reputation and the risk of incarceration. Megan had even voiced concerns about him coming after her, and tragically, it appeared her apprehensions had materialized. Officers went to Hickey's house looking for evidence related to a murder, but they didn't find anything incriminating. However, when they checked his computer later on, they saw that someone had tried to delete everything on the hard drive. A file that had been recently deleted was found, showing illegal pictures of underage kids. This led to Hickey being charged with having child pornography and made him the main suspect in the murder case. He was brought in for questioning regarding the murder, with authorities hoping for a confession. Despite appearing visibly nervous during the interview, Robert claimed to have been at the Navy base the entire day of Megan's murder, denying any involvement and asserting that he had not left the base on the day of the incident. After corroborating his timeline with his colleagues, the police realized that there was a period of time during which Robert hadn't been seen, raising the possibility of his involvement in the murder. Surveillance footage from the base was obtained, but no sign of Robert leaving was observed. Nevertheless, he remained a suspect and couldn't be entirely ruled out. A DNA swab was taken from Robert to compare with the DNA found at the crime scene, and the results came as a surprise. There was no match. Robert was not Megan's killer. This setback left the officers feeling disheartened as they found themselves without any leads or suspects. Attention then shifted towards Chris, who had discovered her body. After obtaining a DNA sample, he was quickly ruled out as a suspect. Additionally, all of Megan's family members, including her younger brother Corey, were also cleared of any involvement. An autopsy later revealed the extreme brutality of the murder, with Megan being subjected to what was termed as overkill. The level of violence suggested intense anger from the perpetrator, raising questions about their motive, given Meghan's popularity and apparent lack of enemies. It seemed likely that the culprit was someone known to her, but with no apparent enemies, the mystery deepened regarding who would commit such a horrific act. As the investigation yielded no suspects, Meghan's parents grappled with the unsettling prospect of her case remaining unresolved, depriving them of justice for their daughter. Detectives decided to delve deeper into Meghan's school life, considering the possibility of a clandestine boyfriend, an admirer, or an adversary within her school community. They interrogated Meghan's close friend in hopes of uncovering potential leads, but she was unable to provide any valuable insights. Subsequently, police interviewed other acquaintances from Woodrow Wilson High School, revealing that Meghan had been involved in a few romantic relationships, but none of them were particularly serious. While none of these individuals emerged as suspects, the authorities decided to collect DNA samples from them as a precautionary measure to eliminate any potential connections. Forensic experts specializing in biogeographical analysis re-examined the DNA evidence collected from the crime scene in an effort to determine the geographical origin of the perpetrator. Their analysis suggested that they were searching for an African-American male. Despite 6 months elapsing with no significant progress in the case, a breakthrough occurred when a cooperative classmate provided the police with valuable information. A list of boys with whom Meghan had occasionally engaged in flirtatious interactions. Upon review, all individuals on the list except one had already been interviewed. This exception was 17-year-old Robert Lee Barnes. In addition to her regular school education, Meghan had also been enrolled in a performing arts program at Churchill High School, where Robert Barnes was also a participant. Meghan had once told her close friend that she believed Robert had feelings for her, feelings she did not reciprocate. Robert Barnes, a talented violinist, was regarded as a diligent student who never encountered any disciplinary issues at school and was not known to cause trouble. He shared a close friendship with Meghan and had even visited her home on several occasions, according to her parents, who described him as always polite and very kind. When the police located him for questioning regarding Meghan, the interview followed the standard procedure, just like the other previous interviews they had carried out. Robert informed investigators that Meghan was a kind and pleasant individual, expressing disbelief at the notion of anyone wishing her harm. He mentioned their participation in a recital together and their occasional hangouts. The police did not find anything suspicious during the interview until towards the end, when they asked Robert if he would provide a DNA sample. Robert hesitated before refusing, which raised eyebrows among the investigators, since all of Meghan's other classmates had been cooperative. Robert politely explained that his mother wouldn't agree to it, but the police clarified that parental consent wasn't necessary, especially considering Robert was now 17 years old. Despite this, Robert declined once again. The investigators couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss with Robert Barnes. After concluding the interview, they instructed him to seek his mother's consent for the DNA sample and to contact them afterward. Later, the detective received a call from the lab analyzing the bubble gum. They inquired about the sample's origin and, after confirming that he had observed Robert placing the gum into the glove, questioned whether he had been under constant observation. To their surprise, the DNA matched the sample matched that of a female. Robert had switched the gum he was chewing with a different piece that he provided as his sample on October 23, 2008. Robert Barnes was summoned for questioning once more, this time accompanied by his mother. During the interview, when confronted with the DNA findings, Robert inadvertently revealed that the incident had occurred on a Thursday. Up to that point, none of the individuals interviewed by the police had been aware of the exact day and date of the murder. When the officers pointed this out to him, he provided an absurd explanation, claiming that on that particular day, Meghan had asked him to come to her home, where he allegedly discovered her being held at gunpoint by a masked individual. According to Robert, The assailant then pointed the firearm at him and forced him to tie Megan up. Robert further claimed that he was compelled to sexually assault Megan under duress. Subsequently, he stated that they all went downstairs, where the gunman seized a knife and stabbed Megan. Robert claimed that the assailant then forced him to cut himself, ensuring his blood would be found at the crime scene. Robert had fabricated this narrative in an attempt to present himself as a victim and explain away any potentially incriminating evidence against him. However, law enforcement remained skeptical of his account and did not believe any of his claims. When confronted with the evidence of footprints, they questioned why only his footprints were found and not those of the alleged assailant. Robert's mother intervened, advising him to stop speaking and vouching for his character, claiming he was a good and innocent child. The police collected a sample of his DNA, and the analysis confirmed a match between Robert's DNA and the assailant, contradicting his claims. Robert Barnes was arrested for the murder of Megan Landowski. The news left Megan's parents in shock, as they could not comprehend how the quiet boy, who used to ride the school bus with their daughter, could be capable of such violence. According to the police, Robert likely gained entry to the home through the window that afternoon, surprising Megan in her bedroom before committing the atrocious acts. Megan managed to flee downstairs, but Robert pursued her, stabbing her with a kitchen knife and continuing to do so even after her death. Afterward, he left the scene and carried on with his life as if nothing had occurred. The investigators speculated that Robert had developed an unhealthy obsession with Megan, while Megan only wanted a platonic relationship between them. When Robert's advances were rejected, he resorted to coercion, which ultimately led him down a destructive path that culminated in tragedy. In September 2009, Robert accepted a plea bargain that spared him from being tried as an adult, as he had recently turned 18. He pleaded guilty to charges of first-degree murder and aggravated sexual battery. Robert Lee Barnes was sentenced to 42 years in prison and remains incarcerated at the Red Onion State Prison in Wise County, Virginia. Whether driven by love, desire, bitterness, or the sting of rejection, Robert's actions and atrocious deeds towards someone he claimed to love and care for were not justified. Instead of accepting to move on, he chose a dark path that led to a tragic fate, ending the life of an innocent soul, and, in the process, ruining his life and affecting the lives of Megan's loved ones. Megan Landowski's tragic story mirrors countless others, highlighting the perilous consequences that can arise from such situations. We extend our heartfelt prayers and thoughts to her departed soul and the loved ones she left behind. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Angela Craig. 46-year-old James Craig and 43-year-old Angela Craig were known as a perfect couple, famous for their happy marriage and lovely family. They often posted on social media about their life with their 6 children, enjoying activities like camping, fishing, and snowboarding. However, beneath this facade, their relationship had hidden complexities and struggles. James had a gambling addiction that caused financial problems as he continued to lose money with each bet. Despite his efforts to change his luck, he only ended up deeper in debt. Questionable business decisions and failed ventures in cryptocurrency also contributed to his financial troubles. In a last-ditch effort to turn around his luck, he went to Las Vegas and spent $2,000. Angela confided in her sister, Tony, about James's financial issues, which had nearly destroyed his dental practice. Angela had to step in to help manage the practice when James could not afford additional staff. Their marriage suffered from James's infidelity, and despite Angela's attempts to leave, she felt trapped by his charismatic personality. The darkest chapter in this story was when James drugged Angela about 5 or 6 years ago. He admitted that he did it to stop her from stopping him from trying to end his own life. This horrible incident became important later in the investigation because of some revealing text messages shown in the video. Angela's recent trip to visit her sister in Utah from March 1st to March 5th, showed a completely different side of her. When she came back home, she seemed healthy and positive, thanks to her regular exercise routine, and didn't have any complaints. On March 6th, Angela's husband prepared her usual protein shake for their daily workout, a routine they both followed consistently. Unbeknownst to her, while she was away visiting her sister, James had been researching deadly poisons online and had received a delivery of arsenic on March 4th. He secretly added this dangerous substance to her protein shake, which caused her to experience dizziness and weakness upon consuming it. Angela sought help at Parker Adventist Hospital and was released the same day, oblivious to the grim reality. Her family assumed her symptoms were just another bout of routine sinus infections, unaware of the sinister truth. On March 9th, she was readmitted to the hospital as her symptoms worsened, leaving the doctors perplexed by the entire situation. James maintained contact with their close friends, Ryan and Michelle Redfern. Ryan, not just a friend, but also a reliable business associate, had supported James through financial difficulties to safeguard their dental practice. Michelle, drawing on her nursing expertise, frequently inquired about Angela's diagnosis, aiming to comprehend her condition better and identify any potential medical oversights. Initially, James disregarded Michelle's worries, asserting they had adequate assistance. Nevertheless, Michelle's persistent monitoring of Angela prompted her to closely track Angela's progress through messages. James fulfilled his role as a caring spouse, providing updates when requested, even though his messages occasionally contained questionable content and poorly timed jokes. Simultaneously, he exchanged messages with his wife at the hospital, expressing affection while also maintaining an inappropriate sense of humor. In the meantime, he was living a double life, spending time with his secret lover, Karen Kane, a married orthodontist from Marble Falls in Texas. He had made arrangements for Karen to travel to Colorado from March 8th to March 10th, coinciding with the time his wife was in the hospital, all part of a sinister plan taking shape. This dark scheme was not a one-time event. The orthodontist was set to visit James for a second time from March 16th to 20th, with a flight ticket already bought on March 4th. It seemed that this new love was what drove James to want to get rid of his wife. However, the lover seemed unaware of James's evil actions, even though she knew Angela was unwell and hospitalized. Instead of showing genuine concern and support for his sick wife, James sent poorly timed messages filled with desires rather than empathy. Angela, determined to get better, ignored his advances and focused on her health. Angela's situation worsened when she was discharged on March 14th, only to be readmitted on March 15th at University Hospital in Colorado, accompanied by her brother Mark. Meanwhile, Ryan received a significant call from the dental office, revealing the hidden truth. This information disclosed the source of Angela's sudden illness, which she had already suspected. When confronted by Angela, James denied drugging her at the dental office, acknowledging the sensitivity of the situation. Caitlin, the office manager, remembered a package from James that she was told not to open. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together. The discovery happened unexpectedly when another employee accidentally opened the package that was meant to be untouched. Caitlin later found it, forgot it belonged to James, and looked inside. She found a biohazard labeled canister with potassium cyanide written on it. Recognizing it was James's, she sealed it and gave it back to him, but he seemed unaware of what had happened. Angela's symptoms perfectly aligned with the effects of potassium cyanide ingestion, including vomiting, low blood pressure, and nausea. Suspicion grew like a dark cloud, pointing squarely at James as the prime suspect in a sinister poisoning plot. Caitlin had also remembered their past conversations and put together an important piece of information. James had made a protein shake for Angela on the day she got sick. This discovery made Caitlin even more suspicious of James. Adding to the mystery were James's strange actions, like staying late at work on days off when there were no patients, and going into exam room 9 at the end of the hallway to use a different computer in the dark, instead of his usual one in his office. The lies were catching up to James, making Caitlin increasingly worried. At that time, Caitlin didn't think much about it. James had also told her about Angela's accusations of poisoning, which greatly bothered her. When Caitlin shared her worries with her colleague Jacqueline, things started to happen. Jacqueline called and quickly told Ryan about the disturbing news. Ryan, very worried, informed a nurse about the suspicion that Angela might have been poisoned by her husband using potassium cyanide. Following the rules, the nurse contacted the police, starting an important investigation. Tragically, Angela had been declared brain dead at this point. James received the devastating news that she would be taken off life support. Ryan and Michelle, who were now in the same car, began discussing the unfolding drama. The sinister plot had reached a critical point, and the truth was starting to come out. During a tense and chilling moment, James called Ryan using the car's Bluetooth speaker, ensuring they both heard every word. James confronted Ryan, as he was aware that troubling information had come from him. Ryan confessed to knowing about the secret package. James tried to come up with excuses, saying it was an engagement ring for Angela, but Ryan saw through the lies, stating he knew it was potassium cyanide, and asked for an explanation. Finally, James confessed that the substance he obtained was potassium cyanide. However, he provided a disturbing account. He alleged that Angela had asked him to obtain the substance because she had been struggling with suicidal thoughts since he had requested a divorce in December 2022. James claimed he ordered the poison for her, believing it was a dangerous game of brinksmanship, describing the situation as a game of chicken, not realizing she would actually consume it. Ryan urged James to stop talking and instead get a lawyer, but the investigation had already begun. The detective reached out to Child Protective Services caseworker Sydney Romero, who was deeply concerned about James's statements regarding Angela's supposed suicidal tendencies. Sydney was extremely doubtful about James's allegations, which defied reality. James claimed that Angela had intentionally taken too many opioids on multiple occasions, and that he had revived her single-handedly, without reporting these incidents or seeking medical assistance. This sounded even more suspicious because their children, who lived with them, were completely unaware of these supposed events. Sydney had a clear understanding of the family dynamics, having previously met with James and the kids. The fact that none of these incidents had been mentioned earlier raised serious questions. Who was deceiving others, and who was manipulating them? As the truth slowly emerged, the situation was becoming increasingly dire. James was in a desperate situation, and he knew it, so he looked for someone to help him. On March 16th, he sent Ryan a series of text messages, hoping to get him on his side. In the messages, James tried to manipulate Ryan by saying certain things, but fortunately, it didn't work. James was getting more and more desperate, and in his messages, he even tried to blame Ryan for the trouble his kids were in. They couldn't go back home because the police were waiting for them at the door. The police, armed with a search warrant, demanded that James hand over his phone, Angela's phone, his wallet, and his laptop, along with their passcodes. He reluctantly complied, informing them that his laptop was actually at the dental office. Before returning his personal items, the police took photographs of his credit cards, ID, and driver's license. The search of James's residence resulted in the police confiscating several items deemed relevant to the case. Among the seized items were various protein powders, workout-style shakers, a computer tablet, 2 unmarked bags containing unidentified white powdery substances, and a water bottle located on the exercise bike in the main bedroom area. Despite their efforts, the police were unable to find a hard drive that could have held surveillance data from the security cameras. The detectives then went to James's workplace, where they obtained his laptop and its password. Inside a small hand vacuum, they found an unidentified white substance, and they carefully collected a sample of it as evidence. Additionally, they retrieved a hard drive from exam room 9 that James had previously used. During their in-depth investigation, they gained access to Angela's phone and confirmed her conversations with James. They found his contact information, listed as the boy, with a picture of the two of them, and his phone number matched the one provided by Ryan and Michelle. However, the most disturbing find came when they connected the hard drive to a television, revealing James's alarming Google search history. This included a search for a new email account to research topics such as the lethal dose of pure arsenic needed to kill a human, which led to a website detailing the amounts required. Furthermore, they discovered a search related to whether arsenic is detectable in an autopsy, which originated from the Carlson Company. A review of James's YouTube search history uncovered a series of unsettling titles, including Top 5 Undetectable Poisons That Show No Signs of Foul Play, How to Make Poison, and Top 10 Deadliest Plants That Can Kill You. As detectives examined his emails, they found emails between him and Cassie Rodriguez, who worked at Midland Scientific, the same company where he had bought potassium cyanide. In the emails, James kept asking about the delay in his order, saying he needed it for medical purposes and providing his credentials, which the company finally accepted. He was getting increasingly agitated as he urgently wanted the dangerous substance to speed up his sinister plan. In a stunning revelation, the investigation revealed that James had been poisoning Angela even while she was in the hospital, all the while pretending to care for her. An email from his lover hinted that he had shared a disturbing secret about Angela's condition with her. In the email, the lover expressed deep sympathy and consoled James, assuming Angela's condition was due to natural causes. She acknowledged the enormous difficulty James must be facing and offered to be present for him, but refused to pretend their relationship was platonic when they both knew it was more than that. Angela tragically passed away on March 18, 2023, leaving behind 6 children. Suspicions surrounding her death grew stronger when her husband James declined an autopsy, a decision that cast further doubt on his innocence. One would expect a grieving and innocent husband to want to uncover the mysterious circumstances surrounding his wife's death. However, James' actions only fueled the growing suspicions. The very next morning, he was arrested and charged with Angela Craig's murder in the first degree. The shocking climax to this dark tale was now in full view. On March 23, 2023, James made a solemn entrance into the courtroom. He appeared with his head lowered, hands in cuffs, and ankles restrained, clad in the unmistakable orange jumpsuit of the Arapahoe County Detention Center. His gaze avoided the eyes of family and friends present, and he entered a plea of not guilty. As of October 2023, James Craig made an appearance in Arapahoe County Court, where he maintained his not guilty plea. His trial has been scheduled for April 19, 2024, and is expected to last 3 weeks, taking place in the spring of 2024. Angela's obituary celebrated her as a devoted, committed, and loving individual, showing unwavering loyalty to her children, family, and friends. Remarkably, she remained loyal even to the man who had betrayed their love and ultimately led to her tragic end. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Maria Ladenburger. Maria Ladenburger, a 19-year-old from Freiburg, sparked widespread outrage in German society and raised serious concerns about the local police and the German government as a whole. Born on December 6, 1996, to Clemens and Frederica Ladenburger, Maria's parents were both lawyers, with her father holding a high-ranking position in the European Union. At the time of her death, Maria was a medical student at the University of Freiburg. In addition to her studies, she volunteered part-time at a local center that provided aid to immigrants. On the night of October 15, 2016, Maria attended a party hosted by the medical faculty, where she socialized with friends until around 2:30 a.m. Since she lived on campus, approximately 3 miles from the university, she decided to ride her bike back to her dorm. Tragically, at 2:37 a.m., Maria was last seen riding her bike towards campus. Several hours later, at 8:20 a.m., a jogger discovered her lifeless body in the River Dreisam, about a mile away from where she was last seen. Despite an immediate call to the police and ambulance, medical professionals were unable to revive her. The incident raised numerous questions about the efficiency of the local authorities and the government's response to similar cases. During the forensic examination, investigators determined that Maria's death was caused by drowning. Additionally, they found evidence that someone had attempted to strangle her with a scarf, which was discovered at the scene. The scarf contained a sample of male DNA, believed to belong to the perpetrator. Near the crime scene, police found several black hairs, 7 inches long, with bleached ends in the bushes. The hairs had roots, allowing authorities to obtain another sample of male DNA. This sample matched the one found on the scarf used to strangle Maria. Despite this evidence, the police were unable to identify the owner of the DNA samples, as no matching information existed in their databases. On November 8th, the authorities offered a €6,000 reward for information that could help solve the case. Thanks to several individuals, the reward amount was soon increased to €35,000. The police conducted an extensive investigation into Maria's death, questioning over 1,000 people, including those who attended her last party. Additionally, more than 100 individuals voluntarily submitted DNA samples for comparison. However, none of the DNA samples from party attendees matched the DNA evidence found at the crime scene, leaving the police without a DNA match. The public was shocked and alarmed when the details of Maria's death were published in the press, and as a result, residents of Freiburg rushed to buy pepper sprays, fearing for their safety, since the perpetrator was still at large. There was also an increase in reports of women being harassed in the city, with 2 similar incidents occurring in the same area, one just days before Maria's death and another 2 weeks prior. As a consequence, self-defense classes became extremely popular in Freiburg, with many people enrolling in local sports centers to learn how to protect themselves. Meanwhile, to boost security, 25 extra police officers have been deployed to patrol the city streets. Due to the high crime rate, many people are too intimidated to venture out alone at night. The police pursued all potential clues, but the breakthrough in identifying the perpetrator came from the hair and scarf found at the crime scene. With the description of the sought-after individual being a male with long black hair featuring bleached ends, the authorities began scrutinizing footage from numerous city cameras. Upon reviewing the CCTV recordings from the city tram, they spotted a man with a similar hair color and length. The individual in question sported an undercut hairstyle, characterized by short hair on the sides and back, and longer hair on top. This particular footage was captured on the night of October 16th at 7 a.m., approximately 40 minutes prior to Maria's departure from the party. The suspect boarded a tram near the university and, after a 20-minute ride, disembarked at the final stop, which was less than a mile from the location where a jogger subsequently discovered Maria's body. Notably, the suspect had harassed 2 girls on the tram, though they eventually managed to extricate themselves from his unwanted attention. On December 3rd, 2016, nearly 7 weeks after Maria's death, the police arrested 17-year-old Hussein Kavari as a suspect. Initially, authorities believed him to be an immigrant from Afghanistan. However, during the investigation, it emerged that he was not 17 and not from Afghanistan. Kavari had entered Germany in November 2015 without an ID card, claiming to be from Afghanistan and born in 1999. Kavari said he was 16 when he arrived, but he lacked documents to support or disprove this. Due to his claimed age, Germany granted him asylum as an underage unaccompanied refugee. He was placed with a foster family in a scenic town near the Black Forest, where he attended school, learned German, and received government benefits. It turned out that fabricating his age was a common tactic, which provided advantages not only when applying for asylum, but also in case of committing crimes, as juvenile offenders face less severe punishment. The suspect's age will be revisited later, as it's just one aspect of his troubled biography. After the police arrested Hussein Kavari as the prime suspect in the Maria Ladenburger case, his image was published in the media. Although German media outlets blurred his face, TV channels and newspapers in other European countries did not, publishing unobstructed pictures of him. A Greek lawyer, Maria Eleni Nenkop, recognized Kavari after seeing his photos in the media. She had previously defended him in court in the spring of 2013, when he was charged and found guilty of a life-threatening attack on a young student on the Greek island of Corfu. Kavari claimed his father had died many years ago in Afghanistan, but the police discovered his father was actually alive and living in Iran. The court was able to determine Kavari's age more accurately after the prosecutor contacted his father by phone. According to his father, Kavari was born in Iran on January 29, 1984, which made him 32 years old at the time of Maria's death. As a result, he was tried as an adult. During the trial, Kavari stated that a few hours before the attack, he and his friends had consumed a large amount of alcohol and taken prohibited substances. After partying, he took a tram to the area where he later attacked Maria. In her free time, Maria worked part-time at the Immigrant Assistance Center in Freiburg, where she tried to help people in difficult life situations. Ironically, she was killed by one of the people she was trying to help. The crime sparked widespread public outrage and disgust, prompting social media users to post sarcastic thank you messages to Chancellor Angela Merkel, criticizing her liberal policy that allowed over 1 million refugees and immigrants into the country. During the trial, prosecutor Ertberer emphasized to the 2 jurors and 3 judges that the focus was on the criminal offender, not Germany's refugee policy. Kavari broke down in court as he read a heartfelt apology to the victim's family. He claimed to be haunted by nightmares of Maria's death every day. "I offer my sincerest apologies to Maria's family," he said. "I wish I could turn back time and undo the harm I've caused. I'm deeply remorseful for my actions, and the guilt is consuming me from the inside out. The agony of what I've done is destroying my life, piece by piece." Hussein Kavari shared his harrowing journey from Iran to Germany, highlighting struggles in Greece and Slovenia. He spoke candidly about scavenging for food, engaging in illegal activities, and living with a foster family in Germany, where he turned to substances and alcohol. Kavari revealed psychological issues, including nightmares and insomnia, stemming from concerns about his homeland. Kavari recalled killing Maria Ladenburger after a night of heavy drinking and drug use. He harassed girls on a tram, then stole a bike but fell off due to intoxication. That's when he saw Maria, pushed her off the bike, and strangled her with a scarf until she lost consciousness. He was attracted to her beauty and took advantage of her state. He carried her into the water, where she drowned. Kavari claimed he was too intoxicated to control his actions, but prosecutors argued his actions were deliberate and premeditated. A psychiatric expert told the court that, in their professional opinion, Kavari's display of remorse was not genuine. They testified that Kavari had consistently shown a strong tendency towards violence, and warned that there was a high risk of him committing another offense. The expert also stated that Kavari had a fascination with aggressive sexual practices and held hostile views towards women. Furthermore, they noted that Kavari lacked remorse and compassion for the harm and suffering he had caused to others. Maria's parents hired a lawyer to represent them at the trial, opting out of attending due to concerns about emotional statements from victims' families influencing the outcome. They also wanted to avoid media hype and politics. They considered meeting the perpetrator, but decided against it, believing Maria wouldn't want them to, and that it wouldn't achieve anything positive. On September 22, 2018, Judge Catherine Shank found Hussein Kavari guilty. Before sentencing, Kavari was handcuffed and wore a black hooded jumper, showing a lack of empathy that drew applause. He received a life imprisonment sentence, but under German law, He's eligible for early release after 15 years if deemed no longer a threat. However, Judge Shank emphasized the severity of his guilt, making early release unlikely. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Zoe Nelson. Zoe Nelson was born on August 13, 1992 in Wishaw, Scotland. At the age of 18, she lived with her mother, stepfather, and two younger sisters, including 16-year-old Laura Ann, in New Mains, a village on the eastern edge of Wishaw, about 18 miles southeast of Glasgow. Zoe attended Motherwell College, where she was a popular student with many friends. A complicated romantic situation developed when both Zoe and her sister Laura Ann became involved with the same 20-year-old man, Robert Bain, who lived with his grandparents about a mile from the Nelson family home. Tensions between the sisters increased, leading to conflicts. On May 22, 2010, Zoe met Robert outside her home, which upset Laura Ann. When Laura Ann saw this, she rushed out of the house to confront Zoe. Their 40-year-old mother, Mary Ann Nelson, witnessed the fight between her daughters. According to Mary Ann, Laura Ann tried to provoke Zoe by flicking her hair and attempted to slap her face, leading to a physical altercation at the end of the driveway. Mary Ann intervened, breaking up the fight and telling the sisters to leave and not come back. Zoe complied with her mother's order and never returned home. At around 11 p.m. that same day, some locals spotted someone setting a fire in the wooded area known as Monkey Hill. The smell of smoke drifted to nearby homes, but at the time, no one paid much attention. Zoe's aunt, 35-year-old Shirley Nelson, later remembered that night, describing how she was sitting in her garden in New Mains after finishing her second shift at work. She and her sister sat in the back of the house until about 11 p.m. when it got cooler and they smelled smoke. However, they didn't think anything of it because of the warm weather. The next day, Zoe's family tried to contact her, but no one answered. On the afternoon of May 23rd, Stuart Bell, a 45-year-old government employee from Wishaw, rode his motorcycle into a nearby wooded area and saw something strange. At first, he thought it was a charred tailor's dummy, but upon closer inspection, he realized it was a human body that had been badly damaged in a fire. He immediately went home to call the police, who arrived 15 to 20 minutes later. When the police arrived, they sealed off the area, as nothing so horrific had ever occurred there before. News of the body's discovery quickly spread, and when Zoe's family learned of it, her mother, Mary Ann Nelson, went to the police to report her daughter's disappearance, which had happened after they had fought, and Mary Ann told Zoe not to come home. The police soon broke the devastating news to the Nelson family. Zoe had fallen victim to a crime. Mary Ann issued a statement through the police, describing Zoe as a typical popular 17-year-old with a strong presence in the local community and many friends. In just a couple of months, she would have turned 18. Her family is deeply distraught over her loss. Zoe's stepfather, Daniel, and her sisters, Laura Ann and Ashley, are heartbroken about what happened, and the family is urging anyone with information to come forward and assist the police in their investigation. Hugh Logan, the principal of Motherwell College, where Zoe studied vehicle body repair, expressed shock on behalf of the college community upon learning the dreadful news of her death. He described Zoe as a very popular student and conveyed that the college's thoughts are with her family and friends. A thorough investigation of the scene spanned several days, with a team of at least 50 police officers working on the case. Detective Derek Robertson, part of the main investigation team, lamented the loss of Zoe's young life and vowed that his officers would not rest until the perpetrator was caught. He urged anyone who saw Zoe between 5 p.m. and 11:20 p.m. on Saturday night to come forward and assist the investigation. Robertson noted that, given the area's popularity on the hottest day of the year, numerous people would have been taking shortcuts and sunbathing, and that the police were particularly interested in speaking with those who may have used the dirt trails. including one that crossed near the location where Zoe's body was found. Zoe was about 5 feet 6 inches tall, with a heavy build and collar-length brown hair. At the time she went missing, she was wearing gray tracksuit bottoms, a white long-sleeve top, and black Nike trainers. The detectives have been reviewing CCTV footage, phone records, and computer data, as well as conducting door-to-door inquiries and speaking to Zoe's friends and family to try to recreate her last movements on May 26th. The police released video footage from a local shop where Zoe was seen just hours before she died. These small details were crucial to the investigation, as they helped the police trace Zoe's movements and ultimately led to the arrest of the person responsible for her death. After examining the crime scene, investigators found a red plastic sombrero-shaped cap from a Sierra Silver tequila bottle near the body and an empty bottle of the same brand on the other side of a small walkway nearby. Due to the body being exposed to fire for approximately 7 hours, forensic experts faced limitations in determining the exact cause of death. The body was discovered with a partially melted plastic bag covering most of the face, leading pathologists to conclude that asphyxiation was the most likely cause of death. Despite the damage, the palm of the right hand remained relatively intact, allowing 2 DNA samples to be collected, one matching Zoe Nelson herself, and the other belonging to an unidentified male. Ultimately, the official cause of death was recorded as undetermined. By May 28th, police had gathered several witness statements that provided a disturbing account of Zoe's last days. One witness reported seeing Zoe with a heavily intoxicated and aggressive man at around 5:15 p.m. on May 22nd, who was hitting her on the head. Another witness claimed to have seen Zoe walking with a man with a tattooed face near his home in New Mains. A third witness described seeing Zoe with a similar-looking man in New Mains, who appeared angry, hit a lamppost, and threatened to take someone's life that night. Multiple witnesses came forward, all describing the same young man, 20-year-old Robert Bain. Notably, Robert Bain had a prior criminal record despite his youth. He had served 18 months in prison for robbery and was released just 7 weeks before Zoe's death. Additionally, he had been arrested 4 times for possessing illegal substances, though as a juvenile, he faced minimal consequences. Investigators started to view Robert Bain as a prime suspect in the case. Before they could take further action, Bain surprisingly turned up at the police station in Wishaw around 5:50 p.m. on May 28th. He was clearly intoxicated, slurring his words, and wanted to make a statement. Bain claimed that a few days prior, he had been in Motherwell, where he got on a bus to return home. During the journey, he said, a man named Stuart Campbell boarded the same bus. Bain alleged that he approached Campbell and asked if he had been with Zoe on the previous Saturday night. According to Bain, Campbell's response was incriminating. Yes, I took her life. This was the first mention of Stuart Campbell's name during the entire investigation, whereas Robert Bain's name had come up repeatedly. As a result, the police arrested Bain on the same day. A strong justification for Robert Bain's arrest would emerge during his trial. At the time of his arrest, Bain claimed to have last seen Zoe on the morning in May. However, forensic tests revealed incriminating evidence against him. A DNA sample from Zoe Nelson's hand revealed not only her own DNA, but also traces of another person's DNA, which matched part of Bain's DNA profile. Additionally, DNA evidence found on a tequila bottle and its cap, discovered near Zoe's body, matched both Zoe Nelson and Robert Bain. According to the forensic expert, this suggested that both individuals had consumed from the bottle and then replaced the cap. Expert Marie Campbell stated that the scientific findings indicated that Robert Bain's DNA was deposited between Zoe Nelson's fingers and on her right palm. The chances of the DNA found on the red plastic sombrero lid belonging to anyone other than Robert Bain were an astonishing 10 million to 1. Robert Bain was accused of being involved in Zoe Nelson's death due to multiple eyewitness accounts and DNA evidence. Despite this, he pleaded not guilty and acted defiantly, even confronting one of the investigators. He also denied an earlier alleged assault on Zoe, where a witness claimed he struck her on the head with his fist. Hundreds attended Zoe Nelson's funeral at Courtness Memorial Church on June 16, 2010. She was laid to rest at Campus Nathan Cemetery. Over 200 mourners, including her mother, sisters, and grandmother, gathered to pay their respects. Reverend Graham Rayburn led the service, noting the large turnout as a testament to Zoe's significant impact. He described her as a happy, cheerful teenager with a big heart, who loved fast cars and Rangers. Sadly, she never met her newborn nephew or got to contact her biological father. On March 1, 2011, Robert Bain's trial began, during which he maintained his innocence. Testifying in court, Zoe Nelson's teenage friends recalled a conversation they had with her a week before her death, in which she attributed her scratches and bruises to a fight with Robert Bain. According to her friends, Zoe described Bain as bossy, unstable, and prone to anger over minor issues. He also controlled her social circle, dictating which friends she could see. Although Zoe and Bain's relationship was relatively short-lived, given he had only been out of prison for 2 months, he exerted significant influence over her and also pursued a relationship with her 16-year-old sister, Laura Ann. Notably, Laura Ann was aware of her sister's death 5 days before the body was discovered by a passerby, but kept this secret until the trial, where it was revealed that Bain had taken Laura Ann to the location of Zoe's body. Laura Ann, who testified from behind a screen to avoid seeing Bain, recounted that on May 23rd, the day after her argument with Zoe, she visited Bain's address to return some clothes. Upon arrival, she observed that Robert seemed nervous and had been consuming vodka. They soon left the house, with Bain claiming he wanted to show her something. According to Laura Ann, he led her to the location where Zoe's body lay. Recognizing the Ranger's tattoo on her arm, Laura Ann identified the body as her sister. During court questioning, Laura Ann stated that Bain had confessed to hitting Zoe, and when Zoe attempted to retaliate, he lost control and took her life. Bain then allegedly used gasoline in an attempt to eliminate any evidence of the crime. Laura Ann confessed to walking with Bain on the day following the discovery of the body. Afterwards, she visited his home, spending time in his bedroom, where they listened to music together. She also had a phone conversation with him that lasted around an hour. A friend of Laura Ann, who testified in court, recalled that Laura Ann seemed happy and normal, despite knowing her sister was dead. When questioned about why she didn't reveal everything to the police during her initial interrogation, Laura Ann explained that she was afraid that if she told them, her mother wouldn't believe her and would think she was responsible for Zoe's death. The jury heard testimony from Laura Ann Nelson, who stated that Robert Bain had threatened her, saying she would face the same consequences as Zoe if she told anyone about his actions. On March 25, 2011, a jury of 7 men and 7 women delivered a unanimous guilty verdict. As the verdict was read, Bain became violent, requiring physical restraint. Handcuffed, he jumped up in the dock, struggling with security officers and police, and headbutting one of them. He also shouted insults and threats at Zoe Nelson's family, forcing the courtroom to be cleared while order was restored. After a 20-minute adjournment, Judge Lady Dorian agreed to proceed with the trial in Bain's absence. In a separate matter, Robert Bain was acquitted of stealing alcohol from an Asda store in New Mains on May 22nd, as well as disorderly conduct related to yelling, cursing, and waving a knife in various streets in Wishaw on the same day. Bain was also acquitted of stealing Zoe's cell phone, which was found in the woods, and of threatening a police officer during an interview at the Motherwell police station on May 28th. On April 27, 2011, Robert Bain was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 20 years for taking the life of Zoe Nelson. He received another 6 years for the obstruction of justice charge, and both sentences were to be served concurrently. The judge, Lady Dorian, described the crime as appalling and shocking. On Christmas Eve 2022, 29-year-old Laura Ann Nelson was found dead in her apartment after not being heard from for days. She was left with 2 children, ages 3 and 4. Her death was not considered criminal, as she had health problems, namely type 1 diabetes. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of the Ewell family. During the Easter weekend in April 1992, Dana Ewell informed his relatives that he could not reach his parents, Dale and Glee Ewell, and his sister, Tiffany Ewell. Dana was still at the family's California beach house, where he had spent the weekend with his girlfriend and her father, an FBI agent. Upon the housekeeper's arrival for duty following the Easter weekend, the discovery she made in the house sent chills down her spine. The distressed housekeeper rushed to a neighbor's home, prompting an immediate call to the police, who arrived at the scene of the grim discovery of the 3 lifeless bodies. Initially presumed to be a botched burglary, it was soon determined that nothing had been stolen, leading authorities to conclude it was a planned murder. But who could have had a motive to kill this innocent family? Investigations ensued, eliminating several potential suspects until one unlikely person emerged as the prime suspect. This is the horrifying case of the Ewell family. Dale Ewell was born in Ohio during the Great Depression, which instilled in him a strong work ethic and an appreciation for every single dollar he earned. His upbringing in a family that endured economic hardship likely fueled his determination and ambition. After serving in the Air Force, Dale found success as a businessman, eventually becoming the president and owner of Western Piper Sales Incorporated, a company that specialized in selling small aircraft. He expanded his financial ventures by investing in several farms with profits from Western Piper. Dale had married Glee Michelle, a woman who taught in elementary school, worked as a translator for the CIA, and served on a commission at the State Bar of California. Together, they became parents, welcoming Tiffany in 1967 and Dana in 1971. Dale's achievements afforded the Ewell family a comfortable residence in Sunnyside, a beachfront property in Peraro Dunes, as well as luxury automobiles and designer clothes. The primary source of the Ewells' income was the sale of light aircraft and extensive investments in the stock market. Having established his aviation enterprise successfully, Dale ventured into purchasing several farms, ultimately amassing significant wealth. Dale and Glee's combined net worth was estimated at $8 million, portraying them as the embodiment of the American dream, even though they maintained a modest lifestyle. While Tiffany followed in her parents' footsteps, Dana significantly diverged from their path. While attending the University of Santa Clara, Dana Ewell portrayed himself as a prosperous entrepreneur, claiming that he was the source of his family's wealth. His fabricated narrative garnered attention from a local newspaper and was even included in the Ewell family's school yearbook in 1990. As a student at Santa Clara University, Dana was preoccupied with notions of affluence and stylish living, owning a BMW, and having access to funds that allowed him to indulge in luxury items, such as jewelry, at his leisure. In contrast, his older sister Tiffany, who graduated from Fresno University, exhibited a more down-to-earth demeanor. From a young age, Dana displayed a tendency to lie a lot and fabricate many of his stories, despite his exceptional intellect and education. Dana's aspirations transcended mere comfort, wealth, and a promising future. He shared his father's ambition, but lacked the determination to pursue his goals through legitimate means. Even during his time as a student at the University of Santa Clara, Dana felt compelled to concoct grandiose tales of his achievements and importance, which were entirely false. He proved to be a pathological liar, deceiving both faculty and peers into believing he was the head of a multi-million-dollar enterprise. The underlying tension within the father-son dynamic, characterized by declining communication, remained largely hidden from others. Dana's tendency to fabricate extravagant stories about himself likely caused embarrassment for his father and could have led to conflicts between them. Despite Dale's upbringing in humble circumstances, and his generous support for his children, it seemed that Dana harbored an unquenchable sense of entitlement. On Sunday, April 19, 1992, in Sunnyside, California, the mild, partly sunny weather created an ideal Easter Sunday afternoon atmosphere. Dale, aged 59, along with his 57-year-old wife Glee and their 24-year-old daughter Tiffany, had spent the Easter weekend at their beach house. Glee and Tiffany returned directly to Sunnyside by car, while Dale opted to fly his private plane to his hangar before driving home. Unbeknownst to them, upon their arrival home after their 2.5-hour journey, they were ambushed almost immediately upon entering. Tiffany was fatally shot in the head first, followed shortly by Glee, who was shot multiple times 30 minutes later as Dale arrived in the driveway. Unaware of the tragedy that had befallen his family, he too was fatally shot as he opened the door from the garage into the house. The perpetrator had stayed in the house and lay in wait for Dale, who had no idea that he had very little time left to live. 2 days later, 21-year-old Dana Ewell, the youngest member of the family, reached out to relatives and friends in Sunnyside, expressing his inability to reach his parents, despite residing with them. Dana had spent the Easter weekend in San Francisco, about 200 miles away, with his girlfriend Monica Zent and her father, John Zent, an FBI agent. On Tuesday, April 21, 1992, the family's longtime housekeeper, Juanita Avenita, arrived for her usual work duties. Upon entering the kitchen, she discovered Tiffany's lifeless body lying face down in a pool of blood, her hands tucked beneath her. Distressed, the housekeeper sought help from a neighbor and called the police. Meanwhile, Donna was still in Monterey, California, at the time of the murders. Upon being contacted by the authorities, her girlfriend's father promptly arranged for Donna to fly to Fresno. Donna appeared visibly distressed throughout the ordeal. Subsequently, the police embarked on an extensive investigation, dedicating numerous days to gathering evidence and interviewing witnesses. The crime scene was meticulously staged to resemble a failed robbery, but seasoned detectives recognized the signs of a premeditated burglary designed to make it appear as though the family stumbled upon the intruder and was subsequently murdered. Upon closer inspection, detectives noted several anomalies: the absence of weapons, bloodstains, footprints, or DNA evidence. Instead, the detectives observed a methodically planned and executed attack. The precision of the assailant's shots was remarkable, with only one miss, and the perpetrator had even retrieved the spent bullet casings. Inside the home, investigators discovered a box of 9mm ammunition purchased by Dale, later determined to have been used in the killings. Although the home gave the appearance of being ransacked, no valuable items were actually taken. There were no signs of forced entry through windows or doors, and the alarm typically activated had been deactivated. The scene seemed deliberately arranged to suggest a burglary in progress. Investigators carefully examined the backgrounds of the victims, searching for any clues that might link to their homicides. Dale's past involvements, including selling airplanes for an individual later convicted of drug smuggling in the 1970s, and a problematic real estate transaction with his brother that threatened to cost investors millions, were thoroughly scrutinized. However, both incidents were eventually dismissed as having no connection to the murders. The police thoroughly investigated all other potential suspects with plausible motives, ultimately zeroing in on Dana. Dana stood to benefit significantly from the tragedy, being the sole survivor of the Ewell family and the primary heir to the estate. Despite Dana's seemingly airtight alibi, being with his girlfriend and her FBI agent father at the time of the murders, the police remained suspicious of him. Dana's behavior did little to allay their concerns, and only reinforced their intuition about his involvement. Although outwardly displaying distress over the murders, including offering rewards for information and a $50,000 reward for the capture of the killer, Dana's grief appeared disingenuous. His emotional response to the brutal slaying of his own family seemed lacking, failing to convey the expected horror and anguish. Instead, his focus appeared to be primarily on matters related to his parents' wills and inheritance, rather than mourning the tragic loss of his loved ones. In a particularly thoughtless move, he invited a friend to tour the house where blood stains and spatters were still visible, displaying a lack of empathy. Allegedly, he even expressed contempt for the police investigation, claiming they were incompetent and would never solve the case. This sparked a prolonged and intense game of cat and mouse between Dana and the authorities, spanning 3 arduous years as they pursued every possible lead, further intensifying the escalating conflict. Dale's brothers contacted the authorities, accusing their nephew of wrongdoing. They alleged that during the reading of the wills, Dana had reacted angrily upon learning that the trust would restrict his access to the $8 million estate until he reached the age of 30. According to their account, Dana had even slammed his fist on the desk and exclaimed, "How could he have done this to me?" referring to his late father. The arrangement stipulated that his parents would cover his expenses until he turned 25, followed by him receiving investment dividends until he reached 30. Half of the estate would be accessible to him at the age of 30, with the remaining half available at 35. Before the funerals for Dale, Glee, and Tiffany, the brothers took steps to hinder Dana's efforts to claim what he believed was rightfully his. However, Dana managed to secure around $300,000 from an insurance policy that either was not subject to the trust provisions or had been overlooked by mistake. Dana's uncles, his father's 3 brothers, were actively preventing him from inheriting any portion of his father's assets and wealth, causing significant frustration for Dana. Despite the mounting pressure from investigators closing in on him and accusations from members of his extended family implicating him in the murders as a ploy to gain control of the family estate, Dana continued to live his life seemingly unaffected. He continued to spend money recklessly, splurging on lavish gifts for his girlfriend, Monica, and even contributing towards her educational expenses. However, the source of his seemingly endless funds remained a puzzle. Suspecting that money played a significant role in the murders, investigators intensified their scrutiny. They uncovered evidence indicating that Dana had been embezzling money from various sources, including his grandmother's $40,000 trust account. By the time detectives intervened, the elderly woman had been left with a mere $2,000 to cover her ongoing care expenses at a nursing facility. The revelation that Dana had exploited his vulnerable grandmother for financial gain only solidified the police's suspicions about his character. Despite this damning discovery, the authorities still needed conclusive evidence linking Dana to the murders before they could make an arrest. One of Dana's college acquaintances, Joel Rovick, was usually captivated by Dana's elaborate tales and his portrayal of a pampered, affluent lifestyle. Joel found Dana intriguing, especially his wealth, success, and apparent ability to effortlessly attract the most attractive women. People around them were puzzled about what they had in common, as they were as different as night and day. While Dana sought higher social status, Joel was more interested in video games, firearms, and explosives. Despite their disparities, Joel's friendship with Dana provided him access to exclusive parties and introductions to desirable women. Shortly after the murders, Joel had dropped out of school, and within weeks of the Ewell family's tragic demise, he visited their home for a tour. Eventually, he became Dana's roommate in the same residence. Joel's association with Dana marked a crucial turning point in the investigation. Both Dana and Joel started making unusual cash purchases, such as helicopter piloting lessons, despite Joel lacking an apparent source of income. Consequently, both individuals came under surveillance, and investigators observed their communication, which was through sophisticated pagers and payphones. Authorities had Dana's pager cloned and wiretapped his landline in May 1993. Joel was overheard by an officer while conversing on a payphone. He was recorded saying, "They don't have evidence. They will try to catch you in a lie." On another occasion, he was heard advising, "Just play the game." Dana continued playing the game, buying his girlfriend a new car and covering her law school tuition after exhausting the insurance payout. As previously mentioned, he built $4,000 from his grandmother's account, leaving her with only $22,000 to cover her nursing home expenses. In 1994, investigators shifted their focus to forensic analysis, which revealed that the murder weapon was a specialized 9mm assault rifle manufactured in Colorado. Records from the company indicated that such a rifle had been purchased by an individual named Nest Jack Pon shortly before April 1992. Interestingly, Jack happened to be a high school friend of Joel. Upon questioning, Jack initially denied buying the gun, but later claimed it was purchased as a birthday gift for himself, unknown to Joel, and alleged that the gun had been stolen. The evidence was mounting against Dana and Joel. At one point, detectives attempted to unsettle Dana during their visit to his university dorm, informing him of their belief that Joel was responsible for murdering his family. Dana remained silent, his face visibly drained of color after the detectives departed. Unaware they were being observed, Dana and his girlfriend Monica, who was present during the visit, hurriedly made a phone call to Radovich. On March 2, 1995, the police took action and arrested Dana and Joel. Joining them were Peter Rovick, Joel's brother, and Jack Pon. Peter had struck a deal with the authorities, offering testimony against his brother and Dana in exchange for immunity. He confessed to the police that he had crafted a homemade silencer and attached it to the murder weapon, disposed of the gun barrel, Joel's tennis shoes worn during the killings, and a collection of gun enthusiast magazines. Peter admitted to carrying out these actions in collaboration with Jack Pon. Upon his arrest, Jack provided a contrasting narrative regarding the firearm. He confessed to purchasing it for Joel, but claimed ignorance about its intended use in the murders. Additionally, he corroborated Peter's account of their joint disposal of evidence. Jack, like Peter, received immunity in exchange for his testimony at trial. As a result of Peter and Jack's statements, the barrel of the murder weapon was located, buried in a dirt field. Dana and Joel, however, were obviously not offered any plea deals. Instead, they were charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and special circumstances, rendering them eligible for the death penalty. The trial didn't commence until late 1997. Dana and Joel, who had once been close enough to travel to Mexico together, share flying lessons, and even live in the same house where Dale, Glee, and Tiffany were killed, now had separate legal representation and adopted different stances during the trial. Prosecutors contended that Dana's motive stemmed from greed, alleging that he had promised Joel a portion of the inheritance. Dana's attorney argued for his innocence, claiming that Joel and Jack had planned and carried out the murders. Meanwhile, Joel's attorney, acknowledging the weight of the evidence against his client, aimed to save him from the death penalty. During his testimony, Jack Pon revealed that he not only purchased the murder weapon for Joel and aided in its disposal, but that Joel had also provided him the details of the events that transpired on that fateful day in April 1992, which he was ready to share. Dana had approached Joel, pleading for a favor which was hard for him to reject. Acting as the executor of Dana's plan, Joel entered the Ewell residence with specific instructions, having meticulously prepared by shaving his entire body. Joel waited patiently for 12 hours, perched on a plastic sheet, to avoid leaving any trace of DNA behind, even a small eyelash. He was also instructed to ensure no bullet casings were left at the scene. Tiffany was the first victim, passing by Joel without noticing him before he fatally shot her in the back of the head. Glee, however, caught a glimpse of the assailant and was struck by a bullet despite attempting to flee to the office. Bleeding profusely, she was pursued and mercilessly shot multiple times by Joel, who then straddled her in a chilling moment just before firing the fatal shot. Glee locked eyes with Joel, recognizing him as a friend Dana had introduced to the family a month prior. After fatally shooting Glee, Joel proceeded to change the magazines in the gun and donned fresh gloves, awaiting Dale's arrival. He subsequently murdered Dale as well. However, during Jack's testimony recounting Dale's murder from Joel's perspective, he had made a crucial error by mentioning, "and I saw the eye," which undermined the credibility of his testimony. The jury viewed his account with skepticism, suspecting greater involvement than he had admitted, but his immunity agreement shielded him from facing charges for the deaths. On May 27, 1998, 8 months after the trial commenced, the jury unanimously found Dana Ewell and Joel Rovick guilty on all charges. However, they were unable to reach a consensus on the sentencing. While 2 votes spared Joel from the death penalty, Dana narrowly escaped the same fate by only 1 vote. They both received 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Dana was imprisoned at Corcoran State Prison, located 50 miles south of Fresno. There, he found himself among other inmates, including notorious figures like Charles Manson. Unfortunately, his grandmother, whom he had previously stolen from, passed away in 1999. In the years following his conviction, Dana claimed to have undergone a spiritual transformation, embracing Christianity. He is registered on an online prison pen pal platform where his profile states that he was a finance graduate from Santa Clara University and had started a career in investment banking when some extraordinarily painful events turned his world upside down. Meanwhile, Joel Rovick was imprisoned at Mule Creek State Prison in Ione, about 2 hours south of San Francisco. This prison has housed other infamous inmates such as Tex Watson and Robert John Bardo. Jack Pond went to law school and eventually became an attorney. Monica Zent ended her relationship with Dana, completed her law school studies, and established a thriving law practice. While Monica was scrutinized during the investigation, no evidence could be found to implicate her involvement, aside from her apparent reluctance to engage in the case that led to her boyfriend's conviction for murder, and the fact that he had utilized some of the ill-gotten funds to contribute towards her law school expenses. Greed, entitlement, and heartlessness were the defining traits of Dana Ewell. His unquenchable thirst for wealth and his readiness to manipulate and betray his closest kin ultimately culminated in the brutal downfall of his own family. It is truly sorrowful and regrettable what transpired to the victims of this tragic story at the hands of their avaricious and manipulative brother and son, along with those who assisted him. As we ponder over this heart-rending tale, our sympathies lie with the victims whose lives were senselessly cut short, and the loved ones they left behind. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Menhez Simon. Menhez Simon, a Canadian with a promising future. However, instead of attending York University to study mechanical engineering, he chose to deceive his parents and live a lie. As the expected graduation date drew near, maintaining this double life became increasingly difficult, severely impacting his mental state. This ultimately led to the tragic outcome of him murdering his entire family. In an attempt to gain attention, Menhez posted photos of his crime on his Discord channel. Initially, many believed it was a joke, but it soon became clear that the photos were genuine. Discord's anonymous features allowed Menhez to hide his true identity, making it challenging for users to uncover his real name, age, and location. In Bangladesh, a country plagued by poverty and overpopulation, many sought a better life abroad. Monarez, born in 1971, felt an insatiable desire to improve his circumstances. Despite the country's rapid development, Monarez yearned for more. He met and married Momtaz, born in India, and they shared a dream of building a better future together in Toronto, Canada. After 2 years of preparation, Monarez and Momtaz made the move to Toronto. They settled into their new life and eventually started a family. 6 years after their arrival, they welcomed a son, Menhez, followed by a daughter, Mesa, 2 years later. Momtaz and her husband Monarez were loving and dedicated parents who worked tirelessly to ensure their family's well-being and happiness. Momtaz was particularly close to their children and was known for her kindness and generosity. She spent a lot of time caring for her family and was always willing to lend a helping hand. In her community, Momtaz was a respected and well-liked figure, both in her neighborhood and among fellow Bangladeshi immigrants. Monarez was a more reserved person, but he was also highly respected in the community. He was a devout Muslim who prioritized his family's well-being above all else. As a taxi driver, Monarez was very familiar with the city of Toronto, thanks to his many years of experience. His dedication to his job earned him numerous awards, including being named the Best Employee of the Month and one of the top taxi drivers in his company. Both Momtaz and Monarez had high aspirations for their children, Melissa and Minhas. Having successfully navigated the challenges of moving to a big city themselves, they expected their children to achieve great things. They dreamed of their children securing high-paying, prestigious jobs that would bring them comfort and prosperity. After relocating from poor conditions, Monarez and Momtaz were determined to provide their children with every opportunity to succeed. They worked hard to achieve their aspirations, which led to gradual but steady success. The family's first major milestone was buying a modest house on Mowan Road in Scarborough. With careful financial planning, they then acquired 2 investment properties, one in Scarborough and another in nearby Danforth. Momtaz took charge of managing the properties, and over time, the family's wealth grew steadily. As the family's assets increased, Momtaz felt a greater sense of responsibility towards her 2 children and their 3 properties. To help with the workload, Momtaz's mother, Firoza Begum, moved from India to join the family. This allowed Momtaz to strike a better balance between her work and personal life. In 2006, the family upgraded to a larger 4-bedroom house in Markham. At the time, it was widely believed that a career in medicine or engineering was the key to success. Monarez and Momtaz wanted their children to pursue these fields, with Minhas aspiring to become a neurosurgeon and Minhas aiming to become an engineer. However, their children had different plans. Melissa, in particular, was a rebellious child who resisted her parents' views and often pushed them away, despite showing great potential. Melissa frequently ran away from home, drank excessively, and used illicit substances, leading to reckless behavior. This behavior prompted strict and sometimes questionable intervention from her parents. If she failed to return home on time, she would be forced to spend the night outside. However, her mother, Momtaz, would occasionally unlock the back door to allow her to enter. The conflicts between Melissa and her father often escalated, drawing the attention of the police. In contrast, Minhas had a distinctly different personality. He was often described as shy and introverted, but he shared a warm and loving relationship with his mother. Momtaz was extremely devoted to her son, often giving in to his wishes and catering to his needs. She would drive him wherever he needed to go, cook his meals, keep his room tidy, and greet him after school with a home-cooked meal. As the eldest son, Minhas faced pressure from his parents to succeed and meet their high expectations. To cope with this pressure, he found solace in the world of video games, particularly massively multiplayer online (MMO) games like Perfect World. In this virtual world, Minhas could express himself freely and connect with people worldwide, overcoming his shyness and self-doubt. The game became a refuge for him, and he spent most of his free time immersed in it. Minhas's life was quite routine. Apart from accompanying his father to the mosque, he spent most of his time in his room, playing online games with his friends. However, his life took a significant turn after he graduated from high school. He thrilled his parents with the news that he had been accepted into the mechanical engineering program at York University. Initially, this achievement brought immense joy to his parents, Monarez and Momtaz. However, it also intensified the pressure on Minhas, as he was now expected to excel and had no room for error. As a result, he became even more introverted and immersed himself in the online world. Minhas started playing an updated version of the Perfect World game, which involved a group of players and a set of rules. He used the social network Discord to stay in touch with his friends and fellow players. The game's atmosphere was generally friendly, and players often formed close bonds with one another. In fact, many of them remained in contact even outside of the game. Minhas felt more at ease expressing himself in the virtual world of the game than he did in real life, where the atmosphere was often tense. As a result, he found solace in the game, using it as an escape from the stresses of reality. In contrast, Melissa acted out her frustrations in the real world, frequently clashing with her parents over various issues. Her rebellious behavior eventually led to an arrest for shoplifting, although she was fortunate to have the charges dropped in exchange for community service. After leaving home to live with her boyfriend, the tension in the household did not dissipate. Instead, it seemed to intensify, putting even more pressure on Minhas to find ways to cope. As a result, he became even more deeply immersed in the game, using it as a means of escaping the increasingly unbearable reality at home. As Melissa broke free from her parents' expectations, they began to pin their hopes on her son, Minhas, as the family's savior. They boasted about his engineering career at York University, but this turned out to be a fabrication. In reality, Minhas attended Seneca Community College, a less prestigious institution. Minhas struggled academically, felt isolated, and abandoned his faith, which deeply disappointed his devout parents. He often expressed frustration about his parents' constant interference in his life, which affected his personal relationships. Minhas met a girl online, which infuriated his parents and further fueled his resentment. However, he found a sense of independence through the online game Perfect World, where he connected with friends in a community on Discord. Initially, Minhas performed well in school, but his grades began to slip as his gaming obsession spiraled out of control. Minhas' excessive gaming habits started to take a toll on his academic performance. He began skipping classes and struggled to keep up with his studies, resulting in him having to retake several subjects. Eventually, he lost interest in studying altogether and stopped attending classes, opting to focus solely on gaming instead. To avoid arousing his parents' suspicions, Minhas would leave home every day pretending to go to York University. He wasn't actually attending classes. Instead, he would spend his days playing games at a cafe on his laptop, working out at the gym, and then returning to gaming until late at night. In online conversations with his gaming friends, Minhas would occasionally joke about leaving the group and make cryptic comments about potentially going to prison. However, these statements were not taken seriously by his online friends, as they were familiar with his tendency to make humorous remarks. Additionally, Minhas often made jokes about sensitive topics such as homophobia and religion, but since it was a gaming community, no one took his comments seriously. Minhas' sense of humor took a darker and more aggressive turn over time. He started making jokes that were intentionally provocative, trying to elicit a reaction from others in the community. However, his attempts at humor were so off-putting that they led to multiple complaints. Ultimately, the community administrators banned him due to his behavior. Minhas became more and more isolated. In contrast, Melissa turned her life around, repaired her relationship with her parents, and even gained admission to York University. From the outside, the family appeared happy and successful, with new beginnings and a promising future. As Minhas realized he was about to lose his privileged status as the golden child, he committed a horrific crime on July 27, 2019, just one day before his expected graduation ceremony. On that day, the family was preoccupied with their daily routines. Minhas' mother and grandmother went about their usual schedule, attending a daybreak event, unaware of the impending tragedy. Minhas began to carry out his horrific plan by sneaking into his mother's bedroom. He struck her on the head with a crowbar, knocking her unconscious, and then slit her throat to ensure she was dead. He repeated this brutal act with his grandmother. After committing these heinous crimes, Minhas calmly returned to his room and opened Discord, where he sent a disturbing photo of his mother's mutilated body next to the crowbar. The recipients of the photo were initially unsure if it was a joke, as Minhas was known for his dark humor. However, the image was extremely realistic and did not appear to be a prank. Minhas was a well-known figure in the perfect world gaming community, but his behavior had always been unsettling, earning him a negative reputation among many players. The situation took a disturbing turn when Minhas posted 2 photos that seemed to show a murder scene. The images were extremely realistic and did not seem to be a joke. Minhas then made a chilling post claiming that he had killed his mother and grandmother and was waiting for his sister and father to return home so he could do the same to them. As the situation worsened and became more intense, other gamers began to take Minhas seriously, fearing that his threats could lead to more deaths. Discord users were convinced that they were witnessing a series of crimes unfold in real time, but felt powerless to intervene. Desperate to prevent further harm, players tried to uncover Minhas' identity, but he had hidden his personal information, leaving no clues about his name, age, or whereabouts. In an effort to gather more information, users reached out to Minhas' friend, Junior, asking him to share any details he might know. When Junior confronted Minhas about the disturbing images, Minhas revealed that his threats were genuine and that he planned to kill his father and sister soon. Meanwhile, Melissa returned home to an eerily quiet house. Unbeknownst to her, Minhas was waiting inside. As she entered the house, he attacked her with a crowbar, striking her on the head, and then slit her throat. After committing the crime, Minhas took a photo of Melissa's body and sent it to his friend John via private message. Minhas posted a photo with a disturbing message, claiming that he had struggled with his sister Melissa for 10 minutes, during which she cried and screamed. In a private message to John, Minhas expressed extreme self-loathing, stating that his parents would be ashamed of him and that he was a coward and subhuman. Minhas then sent John several more photos, including one of the murder weapon and a selfie with a bloody knife. John was horrified and shared these photos with the rest of the group, confirming that Minhas had indeed committed a third murder. Group members quickly saved the photos as evidence against Minhas. Meanwhile, Minhas continued to act normally, waiting for his father to return home. When his father, Monaras, entered the garage, Minhas ambushed him, stabbing him in the neck, just like his other victims. Minhas took a photo of the victim, which the group was unable to prevent. In a shocking turn of events, Minhas shared a disturbing message with online friends, stating, "I consider myself a coward and a loser. As an atheist, I don't believe in an afterlife, so I feared death and wanted others to die instead, sparing them suffering. I realize now how pathetic and selfish I've been." What followed was even more alarming. Minhas told another online friend that he had murdered his entire family and was prepared to spend the rest of his life in prison. He then invited this friend to view photos of the crime scene. However, the story takes a crucial turn. One of the online friends discovered a way to obtain Minhas' IP address, which could reveal his location. With this information, the group was able to track Minhas to his home in Toronto. A user from Minnesota, who was part of the online conversation, contacted their local police department, which in turn alerted the Toronto police to Minhas' location. The police began their investigation after receiving information from an anonymous source. Meanwhile, Minhas was still active online, chatting with users who were inquiring about his next steps. He claimed he would try new things, including drinking, smoking, and reconnecting with an ex-girlfriend. However, it was only a matter of time before the police caught up with him. They were able to track his IP address, contacted his internet service provider, and obtained his physical address. Surprisingly, Menhez did not take steps to cover his digital tracks, despite being an avid gamer and computer user. Just 12 hours after the crime, officers arrived at the Menhez residence. As they looked up, they saw Menhez looking out of his bedroom window. At this point, the police had limited information and evidence, relying mostly on tips from online users. They were uncertain about the accuracy of the reports. But Menhez unexpectedly made the police's job easier. After posting a farewell message on Discord, announcing that the police had arrived, he voluntarily went downstairs, opened the door, and surrendered to the authorities. When questioned by the police, Menhez responded that this was his family's home and that they would discover the truth for themselves. The bodies of Manaras and Melissa were the first to be found, followed by Momotaz and Firoza, near the entrance to the house. Menhez was immediately arrested by the police on suspicion of murder. He was then taken to the local police station for further questioning. During the interrogation, Menhez displayed unusual calmness, showing no visible emotion. The lack of emotional response was notable, as if he was discussing an inconsequential event. He was ultimately charged with 4 counts of murder, 3 first-degree murders and 1 second-degree murder. In court, the evidence strongly indicated his guilt. The Perfect World gaming community had preserved a record of all his online messages, which serve as evidence against him, confirming his culpability to a great extent.